Well, when I hear my phone ding at 3:30 this morning, the first thought was to like, oh my gosh, what are my kids? There's something wrong. And it's Dan. I'm like, oh, no.
Now, curiosity, how do you hear your phone ding? Is it near your bed?
Yeah. Because
Because oftentimes, on a single message, it can be near your bed.
it is because I don't know why. It's just I always feel like the kids, like if they're out or they're somewhere else, and I don't know. It's just the mom. Yeah. But I would not probably have heard it if I was sound asleep. But for some reason, the dog was active last night, and she just, I don't know. So at 3 o'clock, I was actually outside with her, and then came in and got a ding on my phone. And then Manoa and I went.
Did you go with that?
Kevin.
How did that go?
And well, I had the back seat, and I didn't feel very well when we were done.
Oh,
Yeah, but no, I just it was good to do it, and I learned a lot. Yeah, very interesting.
am I correct in assuming that there's no public participation?
There will be some consideration tonight for public participation.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is the last one.
Okay.
So I will open it up to the floor for public participation, 10 minutes.
All of the different budgets, all of the stuff that we came through, that we were in accord with the budget, with the finance committee. Do that?
I want to say yes. I assume that nobody will question that if we're going through it and accepting that budget the way it is. So I don't know how I will address if there's a question or something that comes up if the budget's already been approved basically by the board and so. That's good. Yeah, I'm going to go by department. Yeah, and accept each department. Right.
Because of some there seems to be some
Yep.
So I mean, I'm glad people are here, but I think
Oh, yeah. I made a rubber. Butch, I have to tell you, I'm almost embarrassed. I worked with this guy for 30 years, I didn't even know his name. That's Butch. That's Butch.
yeah, well, I wouldn't.
Didn't realize he had a real name.
Doesn't identify. Stone was at home.
Money man. Oh, there's two of them.
Oh, yeah.
Question for you, but I'm not going to allow me
Are you there?
Okay.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Budget Committee and the Finance Committee. There will be public participation tonight since this is the last budget meeting that we're going to have for this particular budget. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, with public participation, we're going to allow 10 minutes, 2 minutes per. We're hoping to run through this budget fairly quick this evening. I think most everything has been looked over carefully. We're going to go by departments, and hopefully our committee here will take a vote, and then we'll give it to the Finance Committee. They'll do the same. If there are any questions, we'll entertain them then, and then move on. Any questions? Go ahead, Dan.
Just for clarification, now that the Finance Committee has gone over the budget, I'm just curious as to how much emphasis the Board of Selectmen needs to put on the recommendations of the Finance Committee.
In what manner now?
Well, assuming that the Finance Committee brings any cuts, if you will, to any particular budget, how much emphasis will the Board of Selectmen be putting on that?
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
So the way that the process works is that we're going to start with a particular department. Doug, the chair, is going to ask, we're going to consider the governing body budget, for instance. Are there any questions or concerns about a particular item in this budget? If there are one or more, we'll talk about that. There'll be discussion open between the Finance Committee and the board. There may be some adjustments made. There might end up being where it is. At the end of it all, we might see some sort of consensus between the two boards, the board and the committee. At that point, after brief discussion on particular items, this board will be ready to act. They will consider the discussion and decide whether or not they want to increase or decrease or whatever. At that time, we would entertain a motion. Once we've gone through the line items that might be of interest for discussion, once that's done, we will ask this board for a recommendation to approve the department budget. The first and the second in the motion, show of hands, and then we'll turn it over to the Finance Committee, and they'll make their recommendation. So it's possible that we'll have some departments that we're in full consensus, and it's possible that we'll have departments that we're not in full consensus, and so the Finance Committee will have to vote. We may have some articles that are fully recommended by both. We may have some articles that are recommended here, but not recommended by them. And so the goal, I guess, is to consider what they have to say on the items that they have that are of interest to them in each of the departments. Consider that here by this board. The board puts the number in, and then we act, and then do act. And then we move on to the next department.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, let's start off. Governing body, Department 100.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I would recommend that if there are departments here, I know that we're going to have some discussion, there's like on intergovernmental chambers here. And also at some point, under social services budget, the Historical Society representative will be here. And so she's here. So I think that if we would consider perhaps passing those budgets first,
Okay.
working on those.
So the first one that we'd like to go to would be what?
I would just say at this point, we would look at the intergovernmental budget.
Intergovernmental, that's what, 710?
Yes.
Again, Department 710, do we, referring to the board now, do we have any issues with this department?
I don't have an issue, but the recommendations from the finance committee, like, do you have those handy, Chris?
I didn't know we were gonna be discussing those this way. I have the notes that we had gathered that came to email.
Yeah, so for this
I just,
department,
Dan, I know you've been out of kind of touch and stuff. Did you get the email with the recommendations? Did you have a chance to
No.
review it?
No.
So,
You had sent out the,
I wrote the minutes, maybe they don't.
This is right here.
no, you have it?
so we need, I'll lead off here. We need intergovernmental budget. I believe that the only item for discussion right now is the chamber request. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, if I'm missing something. There was some discussion at the finance committee about $15,000 request, and I think that their consensus was that they were comfortable with 10,000. If I'm not speaking loud enough, please let me know. I do kind of start high and low, so that would be in my recollection of the finance committee discussion, the only thing in this budget here that we're going to need to discuss further. We have Sharon from the chamber here to talk, and I will talk also as well for what the town's future collaborations with the chamber. We can try to bolster or try to give you as much information as we can so that you can all make a decision with all the information available. So, with that said, Sharon, feel free to grab a seat here with us. The chamber has requested $15,000 this year. This is a tough year for the chamber. They lost two big revenue drivers, the chamber at the Top of May Trade Show and the town citywide flea market. And the town is working on a collaborative agreement as well. We collaborated with them on the Boost program, which was super successful and put a lot of money into the hands of local businesses, utilizing the chamber's resources. And we're looking to continue a different kind of collaboration with the chamber, different from anything we've ever seen before. And so, you know, our plan, what we're going to do here is we're going to be drafting a memorandum of understanding or an agreement to collaborate or a resolve, whatever you want to call it, that sets the terms for what our collaboration is going to be to generate economic activity in our town. We're going to work hand in hand, if this, you know, if we can, work hand in hand with the chamber. And we're going to have an agreement in writing in place that is going to be considered by the chamber board, is going to be considered by this board, and if we come to some sort of mutual agreement, that'll be our guidance moving forward. So it's a bit of a pilot project, if you will. We're trying something different through these difficult times. I am asking for full consideration of $15,000. I consider them to be a resource, and I also consider the fact that they're going through a hardship right now because of COVID and their loss of revenue. So with that said, Sharon?
Okay. Right now, I can tell you, and I've got the paperwork if you guys need a copy of this. We have 45 unpaid memberships this year so far. I haven't gone whole hog after the businesses for their membership dues because it's hard on everyone right now, and I wanted to at least be as nice as I could. But we do have 45 unpaid memberships. I did bring in 17 new members, but we are down in memberships by, let's see, I've lost $6,150 so far this year. And then on the lost revenue, in the total of the Top of Main Trade Show, the biggest yard sale, the annual dinner, which I was going to make money on, we lost $13,800 so far this year. Also, this affects the hours that I can work, so I'm trying to do more work on fewer hours. If I had more hours, I could do a heck of a lot more going to see the businesses and trying to get new members at this time. But that's what I can do, and I do believe that if you check with the memberships that I have been serving, they do feel that they're being well served. Everybody seems to be pleased with what the chamber is doing right now and the collaborations between the chamber and the town. So I'm hoping you do take this request into consideration and pass it. I really would appreciate it.
Any questions for Sharon? Is that the only item on this, in this department?
Yes.
It is the only item? All right, then we're going to be looking for a motion to accept Department 110. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion to accept Department 110? I do not. Now what?
Well, I think there's going to be discussion on.
At this point, then nobody's asked to question or discuss, so I'm gonna,
Well, I'll make a motion to accept as is.
I have a motion, can I get a second?
So that's what you need for discussion.
That's what I need for discussion. Go ahead.
I mean,
Might not just second.
I just,
She seconded, Mano seconded, yeah. Is that what you were looking for?
well, I just, I was concerned about the 5,000. I was kind of honestly just, I'm usually very vocal and I'm always first and I'm always the one that opens my big mouth, so I was trying to give someone else a chance. But, well, okay, here we go. I myself had some concerns about the 5,000, but in conversations and understanding where we are at as a community and what the need is to kind of try to move things forward here, I am willing, if we're going to have this agreement and we're going to set parameters of what the expectations are, to accept the budget as it is. The one concern that was brought up, I forget, by one of these guys last night was the work in the other communities. Because we're right now asking the taxpayer to pay an extra $5,000 to your budget when I believe Grand Isle only pays $100 and I don't know who else pays. I'm going to put you on the spot.
No, I've got
In the very first budget meeting, you said you were helping Grand Isle with a grant. So I don't feel it's fair to give $15,000 of taxpayer money to an organization that's working in another community. So could you address that?
Yes, the board, because of my cut hours and everything, and because of the lack of funds coming from the Grand Isle area, have asked me not to work on grants for Grand Isle. And I have spoken to the people I was working with, and they are going through the town for that help, for the town of Grand Isle. I can tell you, in Frenchville I've got 3 members, in Grand Isle I have 4 members, St. Agatha, Sinclair I have 6 members, and outside our service area, which are mostly media, larger companies, I have 9. And those larger companies, that's their office. Like, you know, so it's $100 membership. Those 9 memberships outside are $100 memberships.
Are you doing any other work for these communities? I mean, is there anything else that you're involved with?
No, right now what I did is when we started the beautification program and all that, I reached out to the other municipalities and no one took me up on it to work with me on that. So I don't know what that's all about, but they did not want to be involved in that. And then when we had the Boost program, I was approached by some of my outside members saying, well, why isn't it, you know, for all the members? And I had to explain to them that this was Madawaska town funds, and that's how it had to be spent with the Madawaska St. David businesses. So I did tell them to see their municipalities, and I'd be willing to work with their municipalities on a Boost program or a similar program. And I guess nothing came out of that because I was not reapproached with that. So basically what they get is the regular chamber advertising I do, the chamber outreach that I do, And basically, that's what the other businesses get. And like I said, there's 22 businesses that are not in the Madawaska St. David area.
Which is substantial. No.
So Gary, the new stuff that you want to try to work with the chamber on is all going to be in Madawaska?
Yes, so our focus, obviously our focus is our community. I think that by default, us working and collaborating with them on initiatives here, they're going to be working with us, for us. And so that puts us in their office space, if you will, in their wheelhouse. And so I don't see, you know, the only benefit that I see that the other communities might realize from this is that, yes, it does make the chamber more viable as an organization financially and having more hours. And yeah, you know, that's going to benefit the outside communities as well. But the work that we're doing here is for the town.
I don't have an issue with the others, by the way.
I believe too that as the other communities start to see just how hard the chamber is working and how effective the chamber will be, and I do believe that they are going to be very effective because they're going to have guidance. We have certain steps that we're going to be looking to take with the chamber, and so I'm also in favor of increasing that expense of $5,000 to the chamber.
I mean, I could entertain the extra 5,000 as long as, again, it follows that plan. And I'd like it to be documented because we're going to review this again next year. And I want to make sure that next year I'll be asking how effective was that extra $5,000 next year, and try to see some documentation to prove that it was effective. The other concern I have is the 45 unpaid memberships. I do understand that with COVID, with everything going on, I just want to make sure that if we do give this extra money, it doesn't go towards these businesses who haven't paid. And that it goes towards the actual benefit of the town. And if one of these businesses needs help, you know, then we should make a plan for them to pay their back dues before we, you know.
Right, no, I understand. And what I've done is, instead of sending out the billing in February, like I would normally do, I waited till July to send them out. And then I've just sent another reminder billing. Then after that is going to be the notice that if they're not paid, I have to take them off. So they will not be served, because I've already carried some of them. Since I got to the chamber, there were several members that hadn't paid, and I have been carrying them. So those will be taken off the list, and the ones that are paid will be the ones benefiting.
Anyone else?
Comments from the Finance Committee?
So I was in support of this originally. I'm still in support of the $5,000 increase based off the fact that it is a pilot program. Try to help generate some movement within that chamber. The concern is, I think it would have been better represented if we'd have had some material to look at and know exactly what that plan is. I mean, we're hearing a plan, and on the same token, we're hearing that, you know, there was a loss of funding because we didn't have the trade show and so on and so forth. So you were looking for some extra money, but yet at the same time, you need that extra money for a pilot program. So is the fund, it's really unclear if that funding is going to go directly towards this pilot type program, or if it's going to help offset the loss of revenue from the COVID and everything that you have had. I think that's where some of that confusion comes in for the membership that we're sitting here. We don't have anything to go by. You know, what we're hearing is, I lost some revenue, I need a little bit more, and then I want to do a pilot program. And then I guess the other question that came to me today was, what other types of activities are you doing to help generate some more income, or are we looking at doing other things, or are we just going to wait for next year for another trade show, or are we going to try to go outside that box? What does that look like? And we don't have that in front of us, so that's the hard part.
Okay, can I answer the questions one at a time? Okay, basically, I asked for the extra $5,000 in December of last year, when I made the first proposal. This had nothing to do with lost revenue. This was to build up the chamber again and to have a decent wage for me and decent working hours. Because the amount of money the chamber had and could generate in revenue only paid for 20 hours a week. And I can't serve the membership really well on 20 hours a week. Whereas it needs a heck of a lot more hours to do what I need to do. Right now, for extra funding, what I've looked at, well, we did start the flea market. We want to do that again this fall before the holidays. I started that very small. I did not charge a lot because I wanted to see if it was something that would really run here. But we are planning on doing one before the holidays. And right now, the only thing I'm waiting on is to see if Caribou is going to be doing theirs or not. If Caribou does theirs, it'd be the same week that I'm looking at. So I need to either find a different date or do something that doesn't conflict. Other than that, I'm looking at using advertising on our website and Facebook page to see if I can generate some revenue in that fashion. So there are different things that I'm looking at. You know, and some of them are in the planning stages, and I'd rather not speak to it right now. But there are other things that I'm looking at to generate revenue. Does that answer all your questions? I'm not sure if it answered everything you asked me.
Go ahead,
In our initial discussions at the budget meeting, I had serious reservations, but I will support the $5,000 for the simple reason that you do have a pilot project intact. But 2 months from now, we will be working on next year's budget, and at that point, I will not support rubber stamping the same amounts for next year's budget until we have concrete numbers to look at for the next year.
Well, I don't think any budget should be rubber stamped anyway. And I do, when I ask for the budget figure for review, I do give you supporting documents.
Thank you.
So, you know, that's just a given. I would never just say, well, hey, you gave me 15,000 last year, give me 15,000 this year. It doesn't work that way. So I do know that I have to prove the value of the money you're putting into the program.
We're good? Yep, go ahead.
Last night at the budget meeting, I was one of those that didn't support the $15,000. My reasoning was that some of these programs in the past, I myself felt they weren't successful, and I was worried about that. But you're changing my mind.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
And I think it's important to note too that, so what really changed in my mind the most is that if we don't support them through one more year, chances are they're going to end up closing. And then where are we at? So I feel like through COVID, had they not lost the trade show and all that, to be honest, I would have said no. But then I don't want to see you shut down, so let's keep it open another year. Let's see if we can all help to make it successful and do something in town. And then, you know, like Dan said, we have another budget coming soon, so we'll just have to see if there's a change.
And the reason I didn't support the full 5,000 is because this is like multiple communities are involved in this chamber, but Madawaska's the only one footing the bill, which I don't think is right. If we're going to support other communities, they should be supporting some of that 5,000.
Well, I can tell you that I did ask them all for an increase, but you can't jump from $100 to $1,000.
No, I understand
You know what
that,
I'm saying?
but the taxpayers, I don't believe, would like to pay for other communities to participate in our program, and they're not paying. That's why I kind of didn't want to add.
Because right now, the majority of my membership is Madawaska.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I'm serving them more.
Correct, but nothing is saying that you're not going to serve Senegat, Grand Isle, wherever the other communities are.
Right.
Exactly, my point.
But like I say, I have so few members in the other communities that it is,
Right. No, I understand your point.
You know what
I
I'm
see your
saying?
point. I see your point.
because I have been trying to work with the other communities
sure you
to
have.
see that, you know, things are on an equitable, you know, footing.
I'm sure you have.
And I've reached out to Van Buren because they lost their Chamber of Commerce, so I am trying to get them into the fold also.
But while you're doing that,
Yes,
it's
I
costing
understand
us,
what you're
the
saying.
taxpayer, money.
I understand what you're saying.
I would add, if I could, one last comment, that I think one thing that we need to be mindful of is that through our efforts, our collaboration, if we're able to draw people from those communities to come spend some dollars here, then that speaks volumes. And so, yes, you might not be able to get, you might feel like we're not getting a fair shake on membership from the other municipalities, but at the same time, we're going to be driving those dollars into our community. So,
Yeah, that is good. I wish I had thought of that.
Yep, so we have a motion, we have a second, so we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? This goes to the Finance Committee for your vote.
I would need to take a motion on either recommend or not recommend budget 710.
Motion to recommend.
I have a motion to recommend. Need a second.
I'll second, Chris.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed?
So we're all set, Gary?
so the motion carries.
The motion carries. Yep. Your next item that you wanted us to cover was social services, is that it?
Yes, please.
And that's what, 720?
Yep.
So what do we need to discuss there?
I think that the Finance Committee had some discussion on the Historical Society requests. And I think that I don't think that we had, at our last meeting, we had considered that we didn't have a whole lot of discussion on the request, and so I think that we're going to have further discussion. We wanted to make sure Fran was here to represent and answer any other questions that you may have of her. So with that said, Frank, can you join us?
The only recommendation that the Finance Committee had on Monday with Department 712 was to accept it as presented, except for the Long Lake Water Quality Association.
Correct.
There was no recommendation to do anything different with the Historical Society.
There was none?
No,
Okay,
it was
sorry.
only Long Lake Water Quality Association. I believe they recommended to zero that out.
Not
That's right, not
one.
fund at all.
That was the only change we had on that one.
So
And
that
again,
was-
the reason I believe for not funding is because we're the only community paying for the testing and no other communities participating. Again, Madawaska's picking up the whole load, which is not fair.
Well, if there are no other questions, then I entertain a motion to accept.
I make a
So-
motion to accept it.
720?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, wait. Okay.
so if you would, I think that what I would like to see, if possible here, is that if you're going to change a number somewheres,
Yep,
that you would maybe make a motion on that.
I'm sorry, okay.
And
So
then once that's done, then we can just approve the budget as a whole, if you will.
what was that figure that they were looking for, 2,000?
The last one.
I would make a motion that we eliminate the $2,000 for the Long Lake Water Quality Association from Department 720.
Second that.
Any questions? Then I'm looking for a hand, whether we accept it or not. All in favor? Finance Committee? Yeah? Well, it goes to the Finance Committee at this point.
I would need a motion either to, I guess we'll do it the same way for the Social Service Department, Department 720, to fund it as presented minus $2,000 for Long Lake Water Quality Association.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Fran, you're all set.
Just to be sure,
It's
and
nice
wanted
to
hear-
see
Yeah.
Don't worry, we still have to vote.
We still need to vote that,
It's not the vote as a whole.
See, my big mouth helps sometimes, Fran. I said my big mouth helps sometimes.
Sometimes.
All right, so we can start from the beginning now.
Well, no, we still, we need,
So this vote was to accept this budget as is, but there's no more voting on this particular department.
no, the motion that was made was to adjust the 2,000, but there was no motion to accept the entire social service budget.
All right, so then.
Okay, so then we need a
My
motion,
motion was to accept,
the budget
712.
minus the 2,000.
Okay.
sorry, if I didn't make that clear.
It's hard to hear you from here.
Did you guys have other discussion with that then?
Nope.
No, we're fine.
And somebody whispered in my ear that we're all not speaking loud enough, so if we can talk a little louder, that would help the camera and anybody else in the room.
All right, then we're gonna go back to the top of the list, which would be the governing body, Department 100. Have a motion to accept the budget.
Yep, I make a motion to accept the budget as is.
Oh, second.
Take a second. Any questions? If we have no questions, then I need a show of hands. All in favor? Opposed? To the Finance Committee?
I would need a motion to accept the governing body expense, Department 100. A motion.
Second, Chris.
All those in favor? Carried.
So governing body, Department 100 is approved. Town Administration, Department 110. Do I have a motion to accept their budget?
I would make a motion to accept Department 110.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? If no discussion, if I could have a show of hands on approval. Disapproved, all in favor. Finance Committee,
Need a motion to accept Department 110. That's a vote. I'm going to make a motion again.
One, before we do that, Chris, we had a recommendation. Doesn't involve this year's budget, but as a whole, we figured that this line item over all the departments is quite expensive. And we're asking that if other options can be looked at for next year or whatever.
This was not the department
I think
that
that's
you.
the other one.
Oh, it's the
Yeah,
other.
no,
I
it's
think
the
it's the
next.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one had a $65,000 cut, and
Okay.
you're talking about, I don't know what number that is, but you're talking about Department 200, is what you guys had.
Yeah, they don't go in a second. Yeah. Are you okay with that?
I'll make a motion.
Second. All those in favor to accept the budget as proposed, Department 110. Opposed, motion carried.
okay, so Department 110 is approved as is. Department 120, General Assistance,
There was discussion at the Finance Committee meeting to reduce this department by
10%
10%.
is what they, right, that's what you have?
Yes.
That's what you guys said.
But after some explanation that with the COVID and unemployment, that demand may be higher, we decided to leave it as is.
No, Chris, you have your,
I have the notes that says Department 120, there was a recommendation to cut by 10%.
Yeah.
yeah,
I
there
believe it was
were,
out of the GA services part of that budget only.
do you remember it was 2 to 2?
Okay, yes.
And I said, because I vote here, I was gonna not vote and lead you guys, because I wanted you to do your own thing. And I said, if somebody wanted something discussed by the board, then I would vote with that side, so that it would come here, so at least it would be a discussion.
Correct.
And that was one of them.
Okay.
that.
So what was your concern, Christian?
I think for me, that's what we're going to do.
I would just remind everybody that we are mandated by the state under the general assistance ordinance to fund general assistance. There's nothing that says what funding level needs to be, but if we run out of money in the GA budget, we have to continue to pay GA. We can't say, well, we're done, we're not having more money that's approved. We're going to have to continue to fund that in the red if we're not adequately funded. So my biggest concern, while we've explained that over the years we've worked at making sure that GA is administered to qualified people, and the numbers show that we've been going down, but this year is a bit of a concern with what's going on with COVID and unemployment, and then people, potentially losing the unemployment benefits here in the winter. That resources will probably be, all of the resources available, be it ACAP or YD and all those things are going to probably be strained this winter. And yes, we are supposed to be the last place for help. We always try to steer people to resources that are out there, that are available, and then we are the last stop. And so we can't refuse once we get to that point. That's how it works. So I would recommend that we flat fund based on what's going on in the economy right now. It's just my thought. Thank you.
I think the reason that we didn't ask for 10% is because last year's budget was 14,000, and then the proposed budget is 23,000. I believe that's why, one of the reasons we decided to cut it 10%, because last year they only used 14,000.
I make a motion to accept Department 120 general assistance as is.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed?
I will say, one more comment to that is,
I can't hear you.
oh, sorry, one more comment I want to add, and although I don't have any data to support that, but I think that the big unemployment bump this winter after COVID hit kept people out of our GA office. So if not for that, I feel like we probably would have seen that number increase this winter. At the end of the year would have been a lot higher than this.
So the budget passed. Moving on to,
Finance going to do the finance.
oh, I'm sorry, of course. Chris?
I need a motion to either approve or not approve the Department 120 budget. Motion to approve as is. I need a second. All those in favor? Opposed?
So again,
That's the one that's current, that's a proposed budget, with no cuts.
right,
Yep.
right, exactly. Flat funding. So Department 120 passed. On to municipal building, Department 130. A motion to accept Article 1, Department 130. Yep, so moved. Do I have a second? A second by Manon. Any questions? Nobody has any questions? All right, and all in favor of accepting the budget for the municipal building? Raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carried. On to the finance.
I need a motion to recommend Department 130 as proposed.
Chris.
Seconded by Ken. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Article or Department 135, safety conflicts.
I'll make a motion to accept Department 135 as presented.
Second? Any questions? We have no questions. All in favor? Opposed? Chris, with the finance?
Need a motion to recommend Department 135 as proposed.
I make a motion.
We have a motion by Sam and Chris. All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
Moving on to Department 140, elections. Need a motion to accept?
Can I just make a little comment on this one? Just so you guys know, there was a bit of discussion about this department. I know that, people watching this for the first time might feel like this is all flying by really fast. There's departments in here that have cut $60,000. There's departments went from full-timers to part-timers in different areas. This one has gone up quite a bit, and the discussion was had whether we should cut it or not. I'm just making a point that if anyone does see the number, it's up $4,000, but basically that's because we didn't have town meeting in the last budget. So in this year's fiscal year, or last fiscal year, so this year's fiscal year, we have to have two of them, basically, because we're doing this one, and so that's why if anyone sees this and wonders why we're approving this elections department budget going up so much, it's because now we're having two.
And we're having presidential elections as well this
Yeah,
year.
I wanted to share that, because that number was we really picked at these numbers a lot, and we can't bring this one down.
So I make a motion to accept the elections budget, Department 140 as is.
A second.
All in favor? Opposed? Finance Committee?
Need a motion to recommend election Department 140,
I'll move to recommend Department 140 as is.
seconded by Ken. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
Budget is accepted.
This is your department that you wanted to discuss with
Yeah.
So, this is Department 200, Community Development, Codes and Assessing. Do I have a motion to accept the budget as is?
There were some recommendations from the Finance Committee on this one. The Finance Committee recommended that the Board of Selectmen evaluate the department, possibility of combining two jobs into one.
I don't know that we had a second to the motion before we start discussion. Do we have a second?
Oh,
You made the motion, right?
no.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Do you have anything further to?
No, I was just pointing out what the Finance Committee was.
Yep.
So on this particular budget item, there was some discussion, although I believe we agreed on the current proposed budget, I believe we were asking the board to consider looking at reviewing code assessing and community development officer, combine some positions or some tasks, see if there's any feasibility in reducing the cost. We knew that wasn't going to be able to happen on this budget cycle, but we're asking for that to be looked at for the next year's cycle.
And that's between code assessing and the assessing? Code enforcement and assessing?
Correct.
Okay.
I personally am in full support of looking into that for cost reduction, code enforcement as much as community development. I believe it's an opportune time to possibly combine jobs, and I'm not talking about doubling the workload, but I believe we can disperse the workload and make it a feasible proposition for the town and a tax saving.
Anybody else? All in favor of Department 200? Opposed? Carried. Chris?
Need a motion to recommend development code and assessment Department 200. Second.
I'll second it
Well,
with the recommendations added.
pending a review. Good budget. All those in favor? Unopposed, passed.
Department Department 300, ambulance service.
I make a motion to accept the ambulance department budget as is.
Any second? Second by Lori. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Budget is accepted. Chris?
Make a motion to recommend Department 300. Recommended by Ken. Second. All those in favor? Carried.
Police Department. Department 310. Any motion? Accept the budget? So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
No.
No further discussion? And with a show of hands, vote approved, disapproved, in favor, Chris?
Motion to recommend Police Expense Department 310.
I make a motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Moving on to the Fire Department, Department 320. Motion to approve. Need a motion? No, second? Any questions?
Yep.
Yep.
Was there a mention of taking money out of some other account to help with the repair of the truck,
That'll be
that
at the
pump?
end.
Is that in this final figure?
That's going to be in a different item.
Okay,
for that.
thank you. Good.
Any other questions?
Is the Board of Selectmen looking at trying to put some sort of account back into the fire department for capital projects, so they're not in the same situation year after year?
Gary?
Basically, what I'm telling you is the fire department is significantly underfunded, and if we don't do something about it now, we're gonna have fire service within our account. That's what I'm trying to get across.
So to recap, we'll talk about the fire department budget.
Yep.
I'll jump into the capital, because we had a wider discussion on fire department within the capital
Okay.
budget. But in essence, there's going to be some recommendations regarding equipment and funding of equipment
Yep.
once we get the capital.
Yep.
Any other discussions? All in favor? Opposed?
I abstain. Because I'm part of the fire department, I abstain.
Okay.
Need a motion to
Chris, yep.
recommend fire department budget 320. Joel, seconded by Ken. All those in favor? Carried.
Moving on to Department 325, EMA. Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept as presented, Department 325. I'll second.
Any questions? No questions, we have a vote to approve, disapprove, carry. Chris?
Motion to recommend EMA department 325. Recommendation.
Make a motion to
Second
accept.
by Ken. Second by Robert. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Good. Moving on to Department 400, the library. Motion to accept.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept as is with the recommendation of removing $10,000 from the bottom line of the library fund.
Minus 10. So that makes it what, 1, 2?
There was a recommendation from the finance committee to cut 10%, which is 11,000,
Right.
what is that, 11,287?
I'm okay with the,
With 10, with a straight figure?
Before you get too far along, not sure what the right time is here, but there are people here who speak on behalf of the library.
Yes.
So I think, you know,
And they've had that
Zach, I
discussion.
think, you know, we deserve to hear, they deserve our attention before you guys
Yep. Yep. So are we, I don't remember, did we have the motion? We had the motion, did we have a second? Was there a second on the, there was a second? All right, so now we're open for discussion.
Yeah, so
Anybody
let
have
me
any-
explain my reasoning for this. I definitely think the town benefits quite a bit from the library. In no means am I trying to underfund them so they can't perform what they can. Lori did some examination of some other departments as well as mine. No, sorry, mine not did. And we are almost double at some of the other communities for our funding for the library. I do believe there's a few line items that I have some issues with as far as, I hate to call it double dipping, but getting paid for spring cleaning, mowing lawns, cleaning snow off of driveways. I believe those line items should be removed and should be included in the salaries and wages of the person in charge. So if you remove those items and bring it down to the 10,000, I think that would be more acceptable. I do plan also on next year, I'd like to review this budget a little more in depth to hopefully, identify what each line item is for.
I'm gonna stick my nose in there. Ken, did you wanna come sit here?
I'd rather just stand.
Well, all right, because usually the department head comes to sit with us and we talk it out.
Really, Ken, if you could?
Okay.
You need to be included in the conversation.
Is there any other discussion?
Well, I have just something.
Okay.
I contacted the town of Fort Kent. Their appropriation is $36,600. They're like us, they have a library board of trustees, and they're a nonprofit organization, and the town funds the salaries, the FICA, the Medicare, water bills, and insurance. Their board of the trustees covers their electricity, the heating expenses, supplies, and minor renovations. And I guess once a year, they go Friends of the Library to have ways of raising funds to help offset the expenses.
Do you know what their total expense is, or is it just,
That's all they give them.
that's all they give you?
$36,500. The rest is raised by their board of trustees in Fort Kent.
So for reference, our library budget is $112,870.
Right.
Anybody else on the board? Go ahead, Dan.
For future reference, if you will, before we look into budgeting the library, I personally would like clarification on ownership of the building itself, to find out for sure and for certain if we do not own that building, and if we do not own that building, we'll have to cross that bridge for funding for the future.
I do see here that, things have been kind of bottled in together here with library operations, and we just have one figure, but we don't have any idea of what that,
That's right here.
in the big breakdown.
Yeah, that second page.
Yeah, I got it, I'm sorry, I did look at that too, I did see that, I just forgot about it. Ken, did you have anything to add?
The library is owned by the library corporation. And it's always been like that.
Be able to speak a little bit louder, please. We have a hard time making out like everything. And the library is important to me, so I really want to know what's going on. And I don't think I'm the only one here.
The library building is owned by the library corporation. The library corporation was made when they formed the library back in 1940 something. They bought the building, and then in 1993 they expanded it through a giant grant that they got. Whether or not the town owns the building, I don't know. You're still going to have costs, even if the town owns the building or doesn't own the building.
And I can answer that question for you. You'll answer Dan also. The library is owned by the corporation. Upon its demise, it goes to the town of Madawaska. That's in the bylaws.
Yep.
That's a topic that was discussed with the resource committee just a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 now. And since I was chairman of that, a lot of things came up in our discussion. Not only library, but town office, the municipal building with the police department. We discussed a whole lot of things. And it would take all evening to do that, so I'm going to cut it short to just library. At the time that we discussed this business of library, we also discussed the problems of people using the library. And just like the town office, consider moving the town office here and closing that building completely, either selling it or demolishing it, but to move that over here as well. At that time, we were discussing everything with wide open. The problem with the library moving here was that there are some people that are in town that are sex offenders, and they cannot be near where students are, and they would not have access. It's the same excuse for the town office when we talked about moving the town office over here. The town office would probably have been downstairs where the gym is what we had talked about, and also other uses. So my advice to you as selectmen and finance committee is that you resurrect a group of people to discuss all these possibilities. We even discussed about moving the town office to the police department and moving the police department. And we talked about the handicap problem of doing that. So a lot of those ideas were floated around, but it was just our group, 7 people. And we got some information from other people. So as far as the library is concerned, I'd have a real concern about moving it up here for that reason. We were looking at any way to save some money, as you are. So as far as library, I'd leave it alone for now. I think it's premature. I don't know what's going to happen with this business of site selection and the school over there. If that falters, things change. A whole lot of things change. When we made our study, it was 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. We talked about the mill and whether it's closing, and we got some information about that. We talked about the business of possibly merging the schools so that you had one location. So all of these things have been talked about, but it was in general, but specific in some areas, and we had discussion amongst ourselves, agreement and disagreement. So on the library, I'd leave it alone till we know where we're going with the rest of the programs in town. Town office, if this place over here is not used by education, there are a lot of things that you can do with recreation in this building. The town office is a vault in there. This place could become the library. Yeah, I don't know how much money you would save by doing that, but so my advice to you is that if you're think long term and have that ongoing, and not just at a meeting like this where you're nickel and diming some areas. That's all I can advise you with. If you want more information, I'd be glad to meet with you and give you some history in terms of what we have done.
Duly noted. Yep.
So, we had breakfast. I respect those comments because, you know, we did talk about resurrecting that committee, but I realize that,
Excuse me, I am really deaf. So I've never heard any of your discussion until I heard the word library.
Okay, I'll make it clear. I realize that one person did make it very clear they wanted to close the library, but, and I don't even know how that went wildfire, but that was a misconception. That was misinformation that was put out on Facebook today that said that this board was looking to close the library. In all of our discussions, that was not discussed. We have departments that have cut $60,000. The police department cut to a part-time position. The public works cut a part-time position. This is one of the departments that didn't come to us with any type of cut. So we started doing our homework because there are people, unlike you, who are very upset about how much we're funding the library and said, look at the other communities, look at the other communities, this is what they fund, this is what they fund. How is it fair, you know, you're cutting public works like crazy and the roads are horrible, but we're funding this. So we just started to do the homework. And we asked if other departments can cut 10,000, 20,000, 30, 60, can they cut their operation a little bit? Now Jason made some suggestions where to cut. Others of us said, well, you know, they're open 49 hours. Can they survive on 44, 40 even? And that's all we're asking. We're asking for every single department to try to give us some cuts. I know, Ken, you explained to us, I think, the last time that you're paid librarian, but you also get paid extra to do the snow blowing and the shoveling and the things like that. Your aides work 27 hours a week. We're just asking, you know, as a salaried employee, is there more you can do? Can we even just close one day a week? I don't know what it's going to be. But there's nobody here on this side who ever said, shut this library. Dan is a little boisterous sometimes and says how he feels, but it's the last thing he would do is to come here tonight and say, no funding. We would have those discussions and we would speak together and you know, really try to understand the whole communities before we would ever think to make a decision like that.
I didn't know this meeting.
Yeah, I know. That's all I wanted to share because I know a lot of people are here because they thought we were closing it and, you know.
That's not the intent. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm going to take this off so my voice can be heard real clear, okay? I want people to understand the situation that we're sitting at today and what led us to the discussions that we had around this library. And it's actually upsetting me and really unfortunate that the community can only come together when Strifle hits them right in the face. I don't know if anybody in this room, other than those that have been involved in this budget process that has been open to the public, is aware of what the real big picture is. We have a fire department that has a truck that is reaching its last leg. We have a grader that cleans our streets that's on its last leg. We have a fire suppression system at the multipurpose building that's on its last leg. We have a grade school, an elementary school that's a fallout or a response shelter in the event of an emergency that this community relies upon to go there in the event that we need it. All these departments are running off bare bones. This committee is volunteer. Okay, we sat together and we put our heads together and we tried to come up with some ways that we can save money. We're talking about essential services. We have an opportunity to have a fire in any given place in this town. Whether it's a nursing home, whether it's the elementary school, whether it's your house, your grandmother's house, your brother, your daughter, your mother, it doesn't matter. We don't have the ability to do what we need to do as a community to fight those. So the decision comes upon a group of volunteers who sit down collaboratively and try to find a way that we can save money. So we have places that we could look at where we can save. Now, do you want your house to catch on fire and not have a fire truck able to respond and lose a family member? Do you want your school to catch on fire and not have somebody able to respond? During the major winter blizzards and other things, do you want your roads repaired and fixed so you can go to work and enjoy the things that you do every day? Or would you like to go to the library and read a book? Those are the decisions that we face with. Okay? Nobody here says that the library is not worth it. Nobody here feels that the library needs to be closed tomorrow. But those are all options that are on the table. We are here to figure out how to get us out of the hole that we are in. Okay? Everybody on this committee, on this finance committee, supports a library. But we have to look at all options. That's all it is. It's an option. Our recommendation was to trim 10% this year and look at the numbers for next year. Let's look at it. Let's get better at it. The fact of the matter is we don't have a lot of information. If you look at the expenses shown, we pay for parking lot fees, we're paying for general repair and maintenance on the building, we're paying building and casualty insurance on a building that we're not even sure we even own. So you have to take that into consideration when you understand where we're coming from. We weren't out to attack the library. I surely wasn't looking for any kind of Facebook post to go viral and bastardize the people that are sitting here trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. We're trying to do a job. Okay, we need to stop acting like the way we're acting everywhere and start coming together as a community, put our heads together, and stop being part of the problem. Be part of the resolution. If you have ideas how to save this budget and fix it the way it is without making those cuts, by all means, put your name on the ballot, go to the town meeting and voice your opinion. But don't come here and criticize the people that are trying to do it from a legitimate standpoint. Please, take the time to go to those meetings, come and understand the whole picture. Come and understand the whole picture. But do not criticize the people that are volunteering to sit here to do that.
Go ahead, Giselle.
That's why we're here, to understand.
These meetings have been going on since January, okay?
And I watched every one.
So we are here to finalize a budget. We've recommended a 10% reduction. A 10% reduction in that budget is minimal compared to some of the sacrifices that are going to be happening. You're going to hear it. You hang around and hear the rest of that, and hear what the ambulance department's about to face and other things. Okay, this isn't all just one picture. We're not out there to attack the library, people. Nobody wants that. We're faced with tough decisions. Okay, we're trying to get through it. That's all I can say.
Giselle.
I'm not here to criticize, and I thank the finance committee because you also work with the school. I thank the board. I know that it's hard to work. I know it's not easy. I thank you for explaining that you're not here to close the library, and that's great. I'm just here to say that as a former board member on the library for over 20 years, I just want to give you a little bit more information as you move forward. Maybe not now, but when you're investigating it next year, like Jason just recommended, this budget is always, always on a tight wire. That's the term I think that Don Chassie used to use. You're running a building, you're running a salary, you're running a couple of part-time aides, all at about $110,000. And that's been going on for years. I remember when things were cut back then, and it was always very tight. Concerning the snow removal and the lawn care, that was a budget cut previously to prevent having to contract out. So the board, long time ago board, Roger was on there, other people, that was done to save some funds. So, I mean, I'm just trying to give you a little bit more history. This budget, 10% does affect it. 10% of 114,000?
112.
112 is a lot for a small budget. I'm just trying to tell you that take a look at it historically. It's been on a tight wire for a long time. The board runs it really tight. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how my comments that I made a while ago fell. This finance committee runs under the bylaws and the whole finance committee, that was written by me. And it was approved by the taxpayers. And I think they're doing a great job simply because they're approaching it and they're making the attempt. So there was no intent of putting anybody down. The only thing I was trying to put across to you is that get some input. There's some people that have information that would be valuable to you and would help you. It's tough when you go 10% across and you don't take into account for one reason or other. You know, if you take at the federal level, one of those big bombers will pay for a whole lot of smaller programs. And I don't want, you don't want to get me started talking because I'll go forever.
We know.
Okay, so finance committee members, I appreciate your help because not many people step forward. And you pointed that out a while ago, and I appreciate your help and this committee because you're taking it seriously. And I know that that board is the same way. Anybody that serves any public office, especially the ones that are not getting paid, and I know that feeling, I've done that many years, should be complimented, should be thanked. We cannot all agree. You can compromise, and our group of 7 did not always agree. If you recall how it was made, 1 selectman, 1 school board member, 1 past individual that served on the selectmen and resource, and so on and so forth. So, all I can say is keep up the good work, but it's not going to be an easy one. And it would have been a tougher one if that mill would have closed.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. All I'd like to say is whoever started the rumor that they were gonna close the library, shame on them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I speak?
Yep, Roger.
I'm the one who posted it this morning. I posted it with what I thought was correct. I went back later and said, I realized they're only doing a 10% cut. It went out of my control. I was basing it off of comments I heard the finance committee say during their last meeting. Your true, what you would share in your opinions. I didn't see the end where it was down to a 10%, so I admit I was at fault there. I do believe that there was some harsh things said against our library, and I feel that as a teacher, I needed to advocate that books are important. The community does value the library, and that is what I was trying to get the finance committee to realize, was that the library does have value in Madawaska. It serves the whole town. And I'm sorry it got out of control. That was not my intention.
Thank you, but I ask everybody to realize that when you do go on Facebook, Facebook is Facebook. I've had to tell Lori that when she goes on Facebook, just liken it to going to the circus. And if you happen to see me there, it might just be another clown in the circus. Facebook is Facebook, so don't take that as gospel. This is where the decisions are made. These are where the facts are invited, and this is where the decisions are made. But pertaining to the library, for the future, I believe that the town of Madawaska owns enough real estate that we're not talking about doing away with the library. We're just trying to think of how to do this where it would cost the taxpayers a lot less money and have the exact same service. That's all it is.
Before I entertain any more comments, let's try to remember that we have about 2 minutes for each one of you. So with that, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm also a previous board member from the library, and I have to strongly agree with Lister and with Giselle. Okay? Ken, he devotes his time there as the director of the library, not 100%, but 110 plus. And if there's anybody who tries to control the budget, okay, it's Ken. He's very, very disciplined about where he puts his money and all that. And if you look at the history, like Gigi said, okay, of our since Ken, how many years have you been there, Ken? 15. If you look at the history, you'll find out that that budget did not increase that much, because he's holding a tight rope on that. And probably you want to reconsider what you're trying to do, and probably if it's something you want to project, to really look in depth, not only as committees, which you are doing very well, I'm sure, but probably making something with the public at large. That's my consideration, is to reconsider what you think about doing and maintaining it for this year.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Teresa Medor. I'm a teacher at Madawaska High School, and I'd like to speak up in support of the public library. I think Ken does a lot to promote literacy from the young to the old. You can have internet access there. There's computers there, plethora of different magazines, newspapers. So I'm reminded of the saying that a democracy depends on an educated and well-informed populace. And to that end, the library is an important service.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so we have.
So you have,
Oh,
you
sorry.
have a few there.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Bethy, and I understand what Chris is saying about, essential services and fire department, police station, but I think the fact that so many people turned up today, that the library is essential for us, kind of in a different kind of way. But a lot of people rely on that place for their mental health, a place to escape, and I just had to express that.
Okay, yes.
I go to the library every 2 weeks. They got 4 or 5 books. My husband and I give donations to the library twice a year. So when I heard this rumor going around, I thought it was going to close for good. But we're talking about putting the library here at the school. Will we have the same books that
Well, at this point, I mean, the discussion really is not to close the library. Yep.
I sold my house a few years ago. And the real estate came in and he said, what people are looking for is school in the town and public library.
Anybody else? Fran?
Okay, I just want to say that a few years back, there was a similar discussion, and so I wanted to find out for myself. I went and sat in the parking lot or in the library at different times of the day to see how it was being used. So my comment is more how it's being used. It blew my mind. From the morning, there was a certain clientele in the morning. Noontime even, there were certain people going in. After school, it was like an influx of young kids wanting to use the computers. And in the evening, it was a lot of families.
Can we say that that was within the last, what, 4 or 5 years? Or that you actually sat and
Yes.
observed?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
One quick thing. So my goal here was never to shut down the library. I know the Finance Committee talked about 10%. I went a little lower than that, 10,000. And my aim is because I've asked the police department, I've asked the fire department, I've asked the rec department, I've asked every department to reduce their budgets, and a lot of them have. So I'm not trying to pick on the library, I'm not trying to pick on certain services. When I came on the board, my goal was to help the town reduce taxes, and that's what I'm doing across the entire budget. I'm not just focusing on the library. The reason I brought it up today is just because that's one of the items that we haven't discussed a drop in yet. We haven't asked yet to reduce their budget. So we did do a lot of research. We didn't do enough to decide, are we going to move the library? Are we going to change this, change that? The only research we did is this year during this budget, can we possibly ask them to do a $10,000 reduction?
So you've never
Yep, go ahead.
You've never asked Ken to find a way to decrease his budget. Is that what I just heard you say?
Correct. And it's the same thing with the police department, fire department. I didn't sit down with Jim and say, hey, what are the things you can reduce? We've only asked, hey, can you reduce your budget? Same thing with the fire and police chief and so on and so forth. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to echo what everyone says tonight. And I would like to reflect on what you said, Chris. I do appreciate that you fact the need of the health department or the safety department. We really appreciate the effort that they do. And without them, we would not function in this community. And we appreciate all of you sitting here, trying to figure out how to support the community as well. But at the other hand, I would like to echo the effort of and the responsibility that we need to know towards the library and how important it is. If it was not that important, you won't see this many people here tonight. And that's really a very point that you can look at, because we put the trust in you when we figure out all these things. But here we're not to point a finger, we're here to stand with you and stand together. You're heard. When everything is broadcast, we try to follow it. We might not be able here to be with you in the meeting, but we follow what's going on. And we appreciate every minute, every second you do. As a person who moved to the Madawaska and became a citizen of the United States, I appreciate Madawaska, how he supported me and how I am being involved and being a part of the community that I feel it's mine and my home. So with that, I'm going to say, please, I heard that you want to decrease the hours of the library. I don't agree with that completely, because even the hours are already short enough. And I know some few people, they don't even have transportation. They walk mile, 2 miles, 3 miles to get to the library, and that helps them with their mental state, mental health. And we know that September is actually a month of suicidal awareness. If we take that away, we're bringing some issues to our community. So please put that in mind. I appreciate the police department that really continue to serve safety. I appreciate the ambulance that really have supported me and my family so many times. I appreciate you, all of you, but please put that in your ears and let it ring. We need that library and we need school, because we need our future. We need our kids to learn and to be educated. And thank you.
Can I just make one more?
Go ahead, Ken.
I want to go back to the Fort Kent thing. I think Fort Kent has always underfunded their public library because they have the university library there, and a lot of people make use of that. So if you look at the numbers, our numbers are double Fort Kent's usage numbers.
I tried to adjourn and never got a response.
You're saying that your numbers, the folks that come visit,
Yes.
your numbers are twice
And
as
our
much as the Fort Kent Library?
In our circulation numbers, yes.
Right. Okay. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yep.
The company that owns the library, do they help fund anything? I mean, is it non-profit?
It's a non-profit.
It's non-profit, right?
So the discussion at this point is,
I'm sorry. Although we do fundraising, like every week we have a book.
But the company that owns the libraries.
The non-profit corporation.
Don't give you any funds. I mean, are you
It
getting,
the only funds it can raise is through the fundraiser.
other than what the town supplies?
Right.
Okay.
Are there fundraisers done?
I'm sorry?
Is there fundraising?
Oh, yes. We have a book sale every week. But, you know, the amount that comes in would be 2% of the entire budget. And donations are minimal. We do have, there's just a guy
Another type of income, when I was there, okay, is that Ken is working on digitalizing all the St. John Valley Times circulation. And that's a lot of work. But once this is all finished and people can get that online, then I was telling him, well, maybe when that thing is completed and people come online to get their sources out of St. John Valley Times, is there a way where they can pay a fee to go through that database? I don't know.
No, it's probably not going to go online because it's way too huge, and the copyright is owned by the St. John Valley Times, so we couldn't charge for it.
Kind of figured.
10 seconds.
Yep. I like that.
When you remove it, when you review it next year going forward, please make sure that Ken gives you, he may not give you unless you ask, the statistics that he's got, and how much use your Acadian archives there are being used by people coming into this community who ask, I want to retrace my roots. Please ask him about that when you get to that study.
Well, the goal of the review is to sit down with the library committee. And it's not to say reduce more, it's just get a better understanding what the library does.
Yep.
And get an understanding of their findings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Once again, let me reiterate that this is not a witch hunt. This is not a venture to close the library. This is just a venture to provide the taxpayers with the exact same service at a much reduced cost, which I think is very possible.
All right, so are we ready to, so the discussion right now with the library is to reduce their budget by $10,000. This would bring their budget down to $102,807. Do we have a motion to accept that budget?
The motion was made to do that.
Oh, it was made already?
Yeah, I made the motion.
No.
It was
No,
seconded.
it was made to,
Mr. Chair?
it was a discussion, not that we were accepting this $10,000 reduction.
No, that's what, I made the motion to accept this with the $10,000.
Sorry, then I forgot.
Second, so now we just need to vote.
So now we're ready?
Manal seconded,
All right,
but
so,
Gary has.
you know, this discussion went on so long that I forgot that that motion had been made.
I just want
I
to make sure that
apologize.
procedurally we can go through this pretty quickly and then forget our steps, but there has been a request to reconsider. And so I just want to make sure that you understand as you work through your motions, if there is going to be a reconsideration of that motion, that we make it so.
So that has to become in the form of a vote?
Well, there's already been a motion in a second.
Yeah, we need to.
And so
So
either
we
or.
accept it or we don't, right?
Correct.
Is that the proper procedure?
You can do it that way.
Yes. Well, what happened, Doug, okay, is that before you had your discussions, you were making recommendations. And recommendations should be done after the discussion, so you get a better understanding a little bit.
We have a motion motion on the floor, so we'll take care of the motion.
Yeah, so the motion on the floor is to accept the amount of $102,870. Do I have a show of hands to approve?
Leno already seconded.
No, I'm asking for the vote now.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm looking for a vote to accept that amount of $102,870. Do I have a show of hands to accept that amount? 2, opposed? Opposed?
You guys are
So I have
very
to carry, so at this point, I would vote to approve that amount of $102,807.
Well, are you gonna vote for or against? 'Cause you have-
For.
Okay.
So you voted,
To
you all
approve
voted to.
this amount.
Reduce.
To reduce it
To
to
reduce the amount to.
$102,807.
So I'm gonna look
Finance
for-
Committee?
I'm gonna look for a motion to recommend library department expense at $102,870. Well, that would be a motion.
Has it been accepted by the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
They reduced by 10,000.
My motion.
Second? Don't have a second.
So at this point, it goes in as not recommended?
Correct. Correct, not recommended.
It was not approved here by the
You guys
Finance
are not
Committee
recommending the,
Not recommended.
to accept the $102,807.
Didn't get a second on the motion.
I was taking notes, so I missed the thing.
That's it.
So we move on from there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Seer, can you clarify? I'm not clear on what happened.
Public participation.
This committee approved the dollar amount of $102,870. The Finance Committee did not.
So, can I, if I can just,
Yep.
what the motion would look like. So in the town meeting warrant, every article will say recommended by board, recommended by the finance committee. So in the case that, I think what we would do here is that we would have the amount recommended by the board, and we would have the amount recommended by the finance committee. We would reflect, where the positions are.
I don't, listen, can I just say this? I get the vote is done. Procedurally, I understand, you got kind of confused about where we were at. I should have asked this before you voted, but would there have been an opportunity to, I would have still asked for a cut, but I wouldn't have asked for 10. And I think, Mano was looking at me and
So if the motion would not have passed, then somebody could have made a second motion with a different number. Or I myself could have amended my motion to.
it's not that I didn't not vote with you to not support you. I feel like we should have discussed maybe a different number in between, but that's okay, we're done.
Taxpayers will get,
I'm good, yeah.
Well,
have their input at
That's
town
fine.
meeting.
the taxpayers will have a choice. The taxpayers can't from the floor raise the amount. They can bring it down. I have to do a little research to see whether or not they can pick one or the other there at the town meeting. So they may decide at town meeting to, I don't have that answer for you right now, but if it were just, without a finance committee and there was a number there, the townspeople could only reduce that number but never increase it. So,
So if you had a finance committee vote for the proposed budget of 112, does that make a difference?
I don't know. And I'll have to get that answer to Foreign to me here, but right now, I've not encountered this yet in my career, so I don't want to give you an answer and be wrong. I'd rather clarify. I do want to say that, and it was in my mind to mention earlier and slipped, was that we are already 1/4 into this budget. We're in a continuing resolution right now because of COVID. And so the reduction for them is going to hit them harder in the last 3 quarters of this business year because they've already incurred basically business as usual expenses up till now. So, something to consider.
Gary, since we haven't dealt with this in the past, or I'm not experienced with it, just in case the finance committee can recommend a budget based off the $112,870, if this finance committee would recommend $112,000 today, we may not be able to put that on a warrant, but if we do it now, we wouldn't have to reconvene to do that one motion, correct?
Well, I think that you guys have acted.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure, our actions are
I think that there's nothing that prevents this board
from reconsidering.
This one article here, because they still need to set the warrant. And it's, you know, it's not a done deal here until they actually set the warrant and post it, and publicize it, you know, call the town meeting. So they would have the opportunity, I would, you know, tomorrow I would send an email out to legal and say, hey, you know, could the townspeople pick one or the other here? And then I would have that response by the end of the day for them. And they could decide if they want to do something different at our next board meeting or at the board meeting where we set the warrant, I guess. So there's an opportunity to reconsider this, I think. There's an opportunity to reconsider it now. There's also an opportunity to reconsider it before the warrant is posted.
So, but since no first and second was done on the finance committee, we still could, you know, make a recommendation of 112.
Yes.
You know, so I can make a motion to Chris, support 112, 800 was his recommendation, so.
You have, right?
I could propose that, and if you got a second, we could vote on it as a finance committee for a certain amount, right?
Yeah, did you do that?
We didn't.
We didn't, that's what I'm asking, if we did do that, and then you can determine later on, if you can present two of those budgets, I don't know.
Okay, I guess I was thinking, so did you or did you not act on this yet?
We did not. We
Okay.
got
We got a motion and no second.
Okay, I follow.
So my question is how, we didn't support their proposal of 102,000. Does this leave the board, this finance committee open for a different?
If you have a number in mind, you can make that motion.
Are there any other motions from the finance committee on Department 400 budget?
I'll move to propose 112,870 for the Department 400 budget.
So there's a motion, there's a second. All those in favor for recommending the budget for the library at $112,870. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries at $112,870. Basically, you have your board saying one thing and the finance committee is saying.
How does that proceed down here?
That's what I don't know.
Well, my understanding is the board recommends the warrants, and the finance committee either approves recommends it or doesn't recommend
Correct.
it. They don't have, you know.
The board's
going to set that.
This is, yeah, it doesn't.
It's a recommendation, and it will be considered by them, it will be considered by the people that show up at town meeting. What I don't know is whether or not people at the town meeting
can choose from one or
the other.
Correct.
Okay, so because they're going
To raise it if they chose to, which they normally can't. They can't
well, you
raise it.
can't raise it if you had one number there, but if you have two, you know. I'll get some clarification for you guys.
If you could have two, you're going to let your taxpayers decide whether you cut that funding or not, basically, what this would turn out to be.
Okay. Well, once again, it is customary to have on the warrant recommended by the Board of Selectmen and not recommended by the Finance Committee or vice versa. But for those that are present, for those that are sitting in the comfort of their living room, eating popcorn, watching us on video, once again, the people that sit on this board, on that committee, we are here to spend the taxpayers' money wisely. People little realize how often that we are confronted in the streets. Well, why are the taxes so high? Why are we paying so much? Can't we cut that back, it's no easy task. So when budget cuts come around, at times they are necessary. Everybody involved here is doing their very best. So hopefully that flies with the general public.
Very well.
So, just throwing something out there, since we're creating these warrants here, can't the board make a motion to present the town with the townspeople with the second option? Can I make a motion to say, I make a motion to make a second article or a second warrant to say, will we approve 112,870? So that'll give the taxpayers the opportunity to pick which one they want to support.
Well,
That's what we have.
that's what you have.
No, I made the motion for 102,870.
Right.
So we make a warrant saying 102,870, the public can vote. Can we not make a second warrant to say, would they approve 112,870? So that the townspeople can have the final decision to pick which one they want to approve.
Well, we just shot it down, so
Yeah,
we just shot that down, so you can't turn around
No,
and say.
you're not understanding. We shot it down for this warrant. But there's nothing to say we can't create a second warrant that allows the town people to choose. We're creating the warrants ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's risky because each I'm not gonna say you can, but each warrant in an article is an article of business. And so what would happen if both were approved?
Right, what if they were both approved?
Just looking for an option to provide the right,
Well, is there an option to meet somewhere in the middle? Or you're not, I mean, you made the motion, you're good.
I mean, I just followed procedure. I made the motion, we approved
No,
or
I know.
not. I still want to give the townspeople that last final say to what they want. But we got to do it legally. You know what I mean?
So in the warrants, their figure will appear.
Yes.
But I don't think they can vote on their figure. Their figure is just approve or not
I
approve.
will know that. I will have an answer for you tomorrow.
I just don't want to leave it to where we don't have that option.
Giselle might know.
Sorry, Giselle, go ahead.
In town meetings, previous town meetings, depending on how the warrant was written, whether it is open-ended or closed-ended, the public can increase an article if it is open-ended. Depends where that period is.
So can we do that for this item here?
But then they could increase it to
Right,
anything?
I mean, hopefully people don't go crazy, and that's why warrant articles are often closed-ended. But I just want to say there, a while ago it was stated that the public cannot increase. They can increase an amount. It all depends on how the warrant article is written.
So if you wrote up to 112, and then the discussion can happen there.
You know, and I'd be willing to amend my motion to allow that. If that's legal, if we can do that.
I don't have an answer for him. I don't know.
Yeah. I think you're talking long budget. I think you can get your answer and come back to us and we can figure it out.
Yeah.
We know what we
They
want to
made
do,
their
we just don't know
recommendation.
what we
And you guys can reconsider this article when we have more legal information to
Correct.
provide you.
I
I
think
don't think
that's
you need to act on this tonight.
Okay, let's move on. We're moving on to Public Works Department 500. Do I have a motion to accept the budget as is? Motion, do we have a second?
Seconded.
We have a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? No discussion?
Was there mention of some funds that were gonna be taken from somewhere else for the grader?
Yeah, that's
Later.
got
Okay, see that? Yeah.
Good.
Okay, with a show of hands, do we approve the budget as is? Disapprove? All in favor? Chris, go ahead.
Motion from this committee, Public Works Expense Department 500 as is.
I make a motion, I second.
Second. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Moving on to Rex Park, 600, Department 600. Is there
the recommendation from the finance committee on that?
No recommendation from the finance committee.
The recommendation, I believe, was to raise participation fees in small increments to generate revenue and adjust tent rental fees to include some profits.
So I think, generally speaking, the finance committee was supporting this budget, but they did have those things that they wanted us to consider for moving forward in advance of our next budget, was to basically look at our program fees and tent rental fees, right?
Any other discussion?
Yep. On the recreation department, I still have a problem with $2,600 a year for telephone and $3,600 for internet. I have a problem with that.
So, Dan, we did talk about that as a broader discussion for all the departments. And their recommendation, I think, was that knowing that we're already late in our budget and that we don't have any plans in place right now to give you numbers, that they were basically saying, please take a look at what you're using for internet, phone, and all that stuff before your next budget process. And so I think, you know,
Across all departments.
townwide.
Okay?
Come back with a plan for the next, you know, we might have something different. We just need to look at what the options are. But right now, we don't have any.
I think we're looking at what, 36,000 for the combined?
Correct.
For all departments?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think Jason has some recommendations of where to go with some of
You'd
the
have some
internet.
options we can pursue, and that it's a little late in the game to start pursuing those options now, but.
So,
Any other questions? All in favor, show of hands. Is approved.
I abstain.
Abstain. Chris?
I'll entertain a motion for the Park Recreation and Maintenance Expense Department 600, presented as is. Motion by Adam, second by Joel. All those in favor? There.
Department 700, townwide insurance. Do I have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept as done.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Right here.
Yeah.
I would like to add that we noticed a big drop in our insurance premium as a whole townwide. Our workers' compensation premium has gone down because our mod rate has gotten better. We don't have any workplace injuries that bring our mod rate up, so it's gone down. And I would like to just make a statement that we have a local insurance provider in town who really shops it out for us, provide a great service. We call them all the time. And that, what you don't see here is that they also provide dividends. So if there are no claims, like in the workers' comp, you'll see that on the revenue side. We actually budget in some revenue that we anticipate. So the bottom line here is actually even a little better once you consider the dividend payment that comes to us every year. That's all I have.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the budget? Show of hands. Disapproved. Derek, go ahead, Chris.
From the Finance Committee to recommend townwide insurance expense department 700.
I make a motion to accept.
Motion by Ken. Second by Joel. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Very good. Department 710, was there any other discussion here that we need to bring up other than what we discussed already? So we're all set with that one? Same idea with social services, Department 720, we're all set with that one? Debt service, Department 730.
I make a motion to accept Department 730 as is.
Any discussion? Nothing, Gary? All set? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead, Chris.
Motion to accept Department 730 as proposed. Moved by Howard, second by Ken. All those in favor?
want to go to what, pollution control next?
Let's do pollution control, and then we'll have capital reserves, and then a revenue discussion as well.
Okay. So let's go to pollution control, that's Department 960.
I make a motion to accept that, right?
Is there a second? Do we have any discussion? Pollution control. If we have no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carry the budget. All right, Chris?
Motion on pollution control is next, Department 960.
I make a motion. Yep.
Second, all those in favor? Motion carried.
We can get the capital reserve account now?
Yep.
Do we have a motion to accept the capital reserve account figures as presented?
Can we discuss first, or? Because we
You
have
know,
to-
After the motion, right?
Keep it simple, and we don't have confusing motions and stuff like that. Let's just, maybe have some discussion a little bit. I know it's not typical here, but
Then I make a motion that we need to adjust the capital reserve budget. I want to see the generator on there for EMA, and I want us to discuss the grader, and then, you know, whatever else we need to actually discuss, so.
Okay. So what figure are you trying to present?
44,300 for the emergency generator,
44,300
and 200 for the grader repair.
and 200,000 for grader.
Jason,
also-
was there something else that I was supposed to throw in there?
sidewalk project,
Well, there was,
Huh?
sidewalk.
I think we wanted to approach it at a little bit of a different angle than trying to add it to the capital purchases and reserves. Because adding it to the capital purchases and reserve kind of brings it as a tax burden, where what we had discussed was something different.
Well, I see, I know where you're going there,
Yeah.
Jay. Typically, when we repurpose money, reserve accounts or surplus, we call that revenue. And so it's confusing when we write the warrant article to say, I'm going to take money from this specific department to fund this instead. The warrant article, the way the article would, the way that the article would appear would be, shall the boards of Madawaska consider repurposing that for reserve,
Okay,
accounts.
so figure out the whole amount, bring that in as one warrant into the,
So did you take that out of the revenue account? Is that what you're saying?
So if you bring,
Did you take 200 from the ambulance?
well, we haven't gone to revenue
Back
yet,
out?
so.
we have, it's in our revenue budget, we've already put a place mark for 200 out of the ambulance reserve to fund even to
Well,
reduce
because
taxes.
that's
But we haven't been to revenue yet.
what
we
you're
can change that.
proposing is not to have that in there.
Correct, and I can explain why.
And you want to put a transfer, listen, I don't, to me, however you figure the warrant out or you do whatever, those are just, I mean, tell me what motion I have to make, and those are safety in the roads. I mean, we have to do
Yeah.
something, so, those were the two items I was interested in discussing. However, the warrant needs,
So do we readdress the figures that she just brought up? Is that how you
We're
want
going to
to
get to the
tell?
same point with this, it's just the language, if you will. So, in order to take, transfer monies out of the ambulance reserve, we're going to have to ask the voters to do that. Okay? So if you play that out at town meeting, you kind of have to, this capital reserve discussion and those transfers kind of have to happen hand in hand. So if we're going to ask the voters to approve a warrant article for X amount of dollars for various capital reserve projects, that has to tie in to the fact that we're bringing in that revenue from the ambulance reserve. Okay, so we need to get the authorization to take the money out of the reserve first from the townspeople. If they don't grant that to you, then you're not going to be able to do that way. So
regardless of, I believe that these items that were mentioned by Lori, regardless of whether or not the townspeople approve the transfer of funds, I think those items need to be handled in this budget anyway. So I would say we can approve those addition of items into the capital purchasing reserve, and then also when we get to revenue, ask for that transfer, which is already
I'm
there.
thinking that's the proper procedure, but I can't be sure, but I believe that that would be the right way to do it.
Well,
So
as
that
long
would
as
bring,
we're not-
that would,
as long as the taxes are not going up, if they don't agree to the 200. So
think if there
however
are-
it needs to be,
Yeah.
if the 200 is not agreed to, then we need to change something because we don't want the mill rate going up.
The warrant article is gonna have to read as such that shall the voters of Madawaska approve transferring X amount of dollars from the ambulance reserve to fund capital
There you
reserve
go.
projects.
Right.
And whether or not you want to define it for a specific item, okay, I don't necessarily think you have to do that. You're gonna have a bottom line number at your on your capital reserves, and you're just basically going to reduce what you need to raise in taxes to fund that capital reserve department, if you will. So, yes, you could have an article that says, I'll take X amount of money here to buy it, to rebuild the grader. Could do it that way.
but you know, it sounds, Lori, like there's no, I mean, there's no guarantee here. I mean, if the
Well, that's what
townspeople
I'm
say
saying,
no.
like, if we don't do it the way Gary just said, which I think is what Jason was suggesting, if the warrant doesn't specifically say we want to take 2 from here to fix this, then if we put it in the revenue and the voters say no, then we're gonna be
Looking at an
over
increase.
budget, and we're gonna be looking at an increase that we will be responsible for, and, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
that's
we
why I
need
wanted to do that.
we need
on
the equipment
transfer.
fixed, but we can't raise taxes, so
So,
however,
so would we go to the revenue side first to address this?
I think that there could be our wording in the articles that define, so sometimes when we have a warrant article, and we'll put in bold an explanation underneath that describes the transaction, if you will. So we can work on the warrant to achieve what we want it to achieve. I think that, you know, I don't necessarily think you need to decide what the warrant language is here tonight. I know the intent is to take money out of the reserve to fund capital, like the grader. And let's work on the warrant language at a later time, so that we don't end up in that situation where.
Is the total amount coming out of the ambulance reserve?
Well, we had approved, we had discussed putting a place mark for at first 150 coming out of the ambulance reserve, and then that was with discussions with the finance committee at our last joint meeting, going to 200. And I'm okay with that. I support that. I don't support going over that, only because if we can't duplicate that revenue transfer next year, that looks like a tax increase.
Well, we wouldn't have to, because what my plan is to, whatever money we pull out of there is for a one-time item, like the grader and the generator, which we only have to do once. So if we do that transfer this year, whether, let's say it's $244,300. If we do that one-time transfer, $244,000, we shouldn't, unless the generator breaks and the grader breaks again next year, we shouldn't have to duplicate that. So that's where I want to make sure that we can, to not bring up the taxes, we take that transfer of $244,300, I believe it is, to cover the cost of that, and we wouldn't have to do it again.
Yes.
Where does the figure 44,000 for the generator come from?
I believe that was a...
That was an estimate.
Ken's,
from the estimate that
Jim's,
we
yeah,
all
Jim had broke
got
it
in
down.
our.
Jim got a budget estimate.
Did we get a quote from just one place?
No, that's just a budget estimate for budgeting purposes.
Okay.
If it's approved, then it goes to bid.
Right.
So
Okay.
it could be lower, but,
Okay.
I mean, we can make it 45, you can make it
Right.
I would
42
suggest-
and say there's not, you know, we can't go over that with our bid, whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not on Facebook there, thank you later. Okay, I just want you guys to know.
So do you want to give your figures of exactly
But the
45?
44.3, Dan, though, we have to clarify, does not, like, if we're transferring from the ambulance fund, it covers the grader. The 44.3 comes out of, right now, we're at a 305 savings. The 44.3 brings that down to 260.
Okay.
Which is what, 3/4 of a mil, but we still have a lot of broken stuff. Am I right with that? Yeah.
I think you're right.
So I don't know, how does the
So I guess
motion?
the discussion right now and the motion would be that we are looking to increase the figure from what was proposed of 352,000 to 596,300. Are my calculations correct? I believe that's the
By
figure.
adding the 200,000 plus the 44.
Plus the 44.3. Right.
That would make sense.
596, 300, is that what you said?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, before we finish that, the Finance Committee did discuss adding that extra money in the budget for a possible future of different departments, so that's where we would do this as well. I remember, Chris, what you had said you wanted to put money aside for.
What was that number? Oh, sorry.
596,300.
No, but what was the generator number?
44,300.
44.3. Sorry. Christie.
I'm trying to look through what we had recommended. So there was other recommendations that we provided to the board.
Yeah, so one of them was to, one of your recommendations was to look at leasing a fire truck. Obviously, it wouldn't hit this budget, the amount, but it's still something we should propose this budget so they can start looking at it.
Isn't that already built in here?
No, I mean, we have to get the decision to move forward, so if Jim, I'm understanding Jim, if Jim were called the builder, it would take a year to get the fire truck, so we're quite a ways out, and I think, Jim, did you say the first payment would be in the arrears, basically in the back end of, because sometimes, depending on which lease company you go with, they make you do your first payment first, right away, or on the back end?
It's the day it's delivered. The day it's delivered, you pay that.
You make your first payment.
You make your first payment.
So it's on the front end. So that would hit this fiscal year, would hit the next one. But I mean, they did make a general recommendation. It's something I think that they would want this board to consider moving forward. And you guys will have to decide to put in a town meeting warrant, if you so choose so, to authorize, if the townspeople will authorize you folks to tell Jim, go ahead and order that fire truck.
Right, so I don't think we have any number to present. I think we're just asking you to consider funding that truck, however way you need to do it on your end, but clearly it needs to happen.
So on the board, we need to make a motion to allow him to proceed with.
But that's a
That's
separate,
just a recommendation, that's separate from this line item.
that doesn't fall under
No.
this.
There's no number.
No, there's no number, so it's not going to affect it.
But if you wanted, you guys had discussed, which I think we all have, picking a couple of the reserve funds and starting to like look ahead and fund those. I mean, are there small amounts of money that we want to try to fund a couple, public works, somewhere where we think, they used to put in, what, 20 or 30,000 a year, 50 in some cases?
50 on the fire department, correct?
That's basically what our recommendation was, for you to consider doing that again, because it's pretty clear that, even if you order a new comfort truck that they need now, in 2 or 3 years from now, they're gonna need another one. So if you don't put that on a cycle starting now, you're gonna wind up needing 2 trucks in some budget cycle somewhere along the line, and you're gonna see a tax increase, where now, if you approach it now, you just start biting it off a little bit at a time. You know it's coming, right? We know it's coming, so our suggestion is to consider that now and start approaching it in this budget. So next year, you're not like, well, we bought one new truck and now we just lost the tankers, now we gotta do another one already. So if you start building their reserve account now, they have something to work with in the future. Currently, he doesn't have that in his budget.
Well, and I think Public Works is in the same boat.
Exactly.
They have a 20-year-old
That
plow
is
truck
exactly
at the
right.
lake. And, I mean, can we put 25 per in at least say we're putting something? I don't, Gary, are you looking at numbers? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah.
I'm showing we're at 260, to be at $500,000, we'd be at 180, so I think I'm showing we have, maybe 75 to play with, 70, 80. Not that I want.
You're coming up with that figure.
Well, I'm trying to give, I know nobody, I asked this question with them, and it was a little hard to answer, and I know everyone has a different idea of how they're looking at this. I would like to give the taxpayer some kind of savings, whether it's $500,000 or I would love to give them a mill, you know, and say we cut a mill off the budget, but then we cut a mill off the budget and the road doesn't get plowed because the plow truck broke, then we're not doing any better. So I'm looking at, well, what could I live with in my head? Maybe $500,000, you know, and so.
So that's how you determine that 75,000?
Well, in my
you keep
head,
it
yeah,
roughly
just
a half a
kind
mil?
of, like, the departments, everybody cut, everybody did good, the revenue side looks good, so I feel like we can have some type of relief, but we also have to be responsible, and, because if we leave it as is, yes, it's great, but then like Chris said, we're in a little bit of trouble here.
I think the reason why that recommendation is there, we're facing that exact situation today. You have a grader that needs to be replaced, you have a fire truck and there's no reserves anywhere to deal with these things in the future. So if you don't start approaching it now, even though we've already, you know, looked at some of these things and can address them, we can address the grader because you're fortunate enough to have an ambulance reserve that may be able, the taxpayers may be, God willing, to allow you to fix the grader so we can keep our roads clean this year. But if that grader breaks down in 10 years, they got nothing in reserve anywhere. And it's the same with the fire department, you know? We're fortunate enough to have an ambulance service that does very well. That may help solve some of the problem this year. But if we don't address it now, our recommendation is address it now.
So when you put a recommendation like this together, we would be addressing an actual figure. Is that the way I'm approaching this?
Like Lori proposed, we would add to this capital purchase reserve 25,000 for fire, 25,000 for public
Yeah,
works.
25, 25, or 30 and 30,
So
I
right
don't
now-
go crazy. What?
Right now, I'm trying to do the real-time math here and I've not spread out the cost for the library decrease in here. So that's what we're talking 10, so it's not gonna make any difference.
I'm pretending that 10,000 cut didn't happen.
Right, so right now, you know, if my math is right here, with the revenue that we have already, that we've not reconsidered here tonight, that we are showing a 2.3% increase.
A what?
A 2.3% increase in our expense budget. Okay, but we also bring in more revenue. So the net right now is $260,970, less than last year. $269.70, so $750,000.
That's a $750,000.
You have 269, yeah, okay.
$269.70, so it's just.
I came out with, I'm rounding up or rounding down, I put 260.
The library cut sticks and make that $250,000, so you're roughly $750,000. Now, in the capital, I do want to say that in discussions with Lori, that we have our sidewalk project, MDOT sidewalk project. Our match on that is $130,000. Okay, so we have already made 2 appropriations of $17.5. We've already expended engineering costs. So right now we have left in there about $19,000. You see that in the GL.
Yeah, and
so
you
we need to come
expense
up
some, you
between
said?
now and next year.
How much had you spent though, you said?
17.5 minus, 35,000 minus 19 is what?
So you had 30, but the 35, the original 35 counts, because you spent it, and it counts toward the
Well, we
match.
didn't spend it all, we spent it in engineering.
So we're not
already.
short as much as 50, we're short 30,000 plus 17. I was gonna suggest we take that feasibility study money and transfer it, so I wasn't really on that yet, but.
So we spent about 16 so far. We have 19 and our short right now what we need to raise over the next 2 budget cycles.
Our match is what, 35,000?
Our match is
80.
Our match is 130.
We need.
We have to match 130? That is,
Our match is 130.
it's an 80-20, right?
It's an 80-20, but we're capped here. Keith, are you still here?
No.
No, we don't.
So,
So while he's looking for that figure, I mean,
So we still have to raise 95 for our match over the next 2 budget cycles.
95,000?
Yes.
45 per, no, 47.50,
But does
47.5.
does that include the 17.5 that's already in there?
Yes. Yes, that's already there.
So 17.5 is in there plus 95.
Yes.
We need a motion to extend the meeting.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to go beyond the 2 hour.
You need a second? All in favor?
So even if we move the feasibility study money, we still need to move an extra maybe 15, right? Oh, 70.
So if we transfer the feasibility to 20,000 for feasibility, we'd have 75 to raise over 2 budget cycles.
There's 57, 60 for in the -26.
We would have to do 37.5 this year and 37.5 next year to get there.
So you're saying if we transfer the feasibility money, then we have to add an additional 37.5 right now and an additional next year. I've been working off an $80,000 number that I was given when this started, so this is confusing me.
Yeah, that's because I was looking at something else. I was not looking at the right information.
Okay.
Our commitment is 130. We were budgeting it at 17.5. The original scope of the project, when it started back in 2017 is when it was initiated. But the project was expanded to do both sides of that main street from 14th Ave to 16th Ave. Okay, so our match under the original scope was at 17.5 per year, and that's where I had that number. Okay, but the project was expanded to do both sides. And that was approved.
So it was 130 minus, you've already put 35 in there,
No, we don't.
whether it got spent or not.
We have 35 that we've allocated, and we spent about 16 of that already in engineering. So right now,
Right, Gary, that's what I'm saying. So you put, never mind what you spent. We needed to match 130.
yeah,
We had 35 already, right? And we're putting another 17.5, so it's 77.5 we need to come up with. $130 minus the 35 that, like, you've already put in for 2 years.
yeah.
17.5 is going in this year.
If we do 17.5.
Right, so, well, that's already there, I'm saying. I'm asking how much more we have to come up with. So now, we have to find 77.5 over 2 budget cycles.
Hold on. So we have, our match is 130, okay? We have already committed 35 in all.
Right.
Okay? What's already in our reserve, plus what will be expended out of there for engineering.
Right,
So, hold on.
plus 17.5 that's already in this budget.
Right. Well, it's in this budget, but we've not acted on it.
No, right, but it's already, when we are talking, you and I, about $260,000 left, that 17.5 is already there,
Yes,
okay?
Yeah.
So we need 77.5 more.
correct.
In 2 budget cycles. So now we can get 25,000 from transfers,
20 for the,
so we can't touch that health number.
well, we could.
Where were you looking to get that figure?
There's an old health reserve account there. That's in,
So that leaves like 52,000. So, and that figure was what, 22?
The feasibility study is -30. It's in your, if you look at
Yep,
your capital.
I remember seeing it the last
Okay,
page.
it's the -30, it's 20,000. There's a health, which is a -26, there's 5760 that's been there a long time.
Right.
And there's an almost negligible $500 in the 150th if that's what the auditor comes up with, but So 52,
So it comes to 52,500. So you're looking at roughly $27,000 this year and the remainder next year.
26,250.
so
So
we
your
should just,
17.5 would go up to 27.5 this year, and 27.5 next year. If we make those transfers from those old,
No, it would be the 27.
no, it has to go up, that plus 17.5.
And you get 43,750.
So 43,750? Sorry, you guys, I just,
Better to be right now than wrong later.
well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying, like, we can't do this and then have a surprise. So we have maybe, what, $30 left, we can put in the fire department or the public works? No? 30,000.
Or Happy Meals.
I mean, it depends what you guys want to do. Like,
Well-
I'm sitting here saying, like, I want to at least give the taxpayer half a mil, but we don't have to do that.
Well, I don't
Or we
think-
cannot fund any of this and do a mill.
I don't think
Like,
we should
you guys
start-
need to say something here.
Yeah.
It's not all just me.
I don't think we should aim and say, let's aim for this number and figure out what we can do. We know we want to put 25 for the fire, 25 for public work. We just said 43,750 for the sidewalk project. Is there anything else that we need? That's what we need to look at, not
We don't
how.
have to fully do the 50% of the sidewalk project this year. We can do a greater share next year.
But if we do a greater share next year, it's a chance that we might have to bring the taxes up next year to cover that greater share. If we do it half and half, then, you know what I mean? Why only reduce by half a mil this year if we have to bring it up by a quarter of a mil next year? If we do half and half, then it's going to be the same next year. We're not have to adjust.
But now 20-something years of board meetings taught you to be quiet. It's not a good thing anymore there. Now you got to talk.
No, I want some part of that mill rate to go down. It doesn't have to go down in full, but it has to go down.
So how do you guys feel about the 25, 25, and 43? Is that, do you understand what we're doing there and does it make sense?
So that brings us to what, as far as what we're going to have to play for reduction in the mill rate? Does it leave anything?
160. It's not
160 is what, not even a third.
not enough for me.
It's a
but-
third, really, is what it is. It becomes a third. So, less than a third.
So those are the hard decisions, right?
Yep.
So here's where the rubber meets the road, and here's where, I'm gonna, for my 2 cents, or whatever it's worth, the question was asked before, how much would be a good amount to save for me? All of it. I'd be great to pay no taxes, but I know it's not really reasonable. At the same time, we're talking about essential services, so you kind of have to find a way to fund it, and you're in catch-22 here. You want to bring taxes down, but in the end of the day, it doesn't look like you're going to bring down a whole lot. If you try to bring them down and avoid this year, you may be looking at a bigger problem next year. And I think that's what led us to where we're at today. So that's the drawback.
Right. So how do you feel about these numbers here that we presented?
Me personally, I want my taxes to go down, but I also understand that we need to do these things. This isn't something you're gonna fix in one budget cycle, okay? This is something that's gonna take years to fix the problem.
A lot of years.
So
And
right
that's
now, we
why
have to kind of vote on it.
decisions that, like looking at libraries or looking at fire departments and taking money from ambulances and those sorts of things are big decisions. They hurt. But that's what you're faced with. That's the CU. I put my name on that ballot. That's what you guys put on that ballot. That's your decision. I'm gonna leave it up to you. I'm just telling you that if you're asking me, we need to provide these people with equipment that they gotta do their job with. And right now, we're not giving them the resource that they need. So if you want to adjust it this year, go right ahead. If not, well, we'll deal with it next year.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're giving something. We're giving 25 fire, 25 public work, plus the
I
sidewalk.
think it's a valid attempt to try to get going somewhere. You gotta start somewhere. I mean, that's my
25,
opinion.
and the last figure we were calculating was what?
43,750, I believe, is the number we came up with for the sidewalk. That's that 17 and the 20.
You doing the math, Gary? Our calculators better work, because if we
You gotta
leave
come up
here
with-
with an
you need to come up
increase,
with
I'm gonna
77.5 for
move.
your sidewalk.
Huh?
You need to come up with 77.5 for your sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
to get to your 130. So if but if you repurpose the sidewalk, town office study, it gives you 20 and potentially going into the,
Is it exactly 20?
yeah, it's in your GL.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
So you're somewhere in, 57, and if you go for the health reserve, if you hit that, you're in the $50,000 range. So to me, if you go 50-50 between this year and next year, or a mix.
So that's where the 43, so we're saying 43,750 for the sidewalk instead of 17,500.
Right.
Right.
So that's in total an additional 93,750.
Well,
If you did
200.
43,750 this year for the sidewalk project, next year you would have to do 26,250 to make that balance out.
No, we have to do 43,750 again. No?
You're right, sorry,
Yeah,
you're right.
yes. That's how the math came out a while ago.
Yeah, you're right.
If you have to go to the taxpayers, and I know you've been working hard on this, but if you have to go back to the taxpayers,
Why aren't you working harder?
that's a very simple question. It's because I am of a totally different
No,
mindset
I know.
with this. But if you have to go to the taxpayers and tell them that you're increasing the budget by $500,000, I don't think you should be bearing any feelings of guilt for this. We are here to provide services to the taxpayers, and if the taxpayers don't like it, I think it's up to the taxpayers to show up to town meeting and start telling us where they want to cut. If we have to cut services, the only way you can reduce your budget is by cutting services. That's very simple.
Now we
It's a
can't
simple
cut more than
mathematics. And if the taxpayers don't like what they're paying, it's up to them to show up to town meeting and assist us and let us know where they want cuts in order for their taxes to go down. Very simple.
I just want to say, we are not looking at an increase.
No, definitely.
It's just a slight decrease.
A slight decrease.
Are you that optimistic for next year's cycle?
Who knows?
1 year at a time.
I do.
I mean, that's what we're gonna do, 1 year at a time, but I think this will allow us.
I would love next year's cycle to get together as a group before we're here
Yeah.
and get the taxpayers in, have some workshops, say, okay, it's very obvious, I've been hit for weeks. Cut the library, cut the library, cut the library. Then people showed up, and no offense to them, I know a lot of them have young kids, but now we're in the stuff like the ambulance and the fire department and everyone left, and so we're not gonna ever hear, I wanna get those people in, and I wanna say, okay, like, you guys, what service do you want us to get rid of so that we can make your taxes go down?
Bring up the budget 3 mils. You'll get them here.
You definitely wanna do that. But you gotta
We can't
think.
do it in this budget, we just can't,
You gotta think too, that 43,750 is gonna be here this year and next
and
budget.
next year.
But the budget after that, you're looking at not having that, so that's a potential path to.
But then the plow truck at the lake's gonna be dead,
Well,
so.
exactly, so then we can always take that 43,750 and add an extra 10,000 to the fire and an extra 10,000 to public work.
Yeah.
Nothing to say we can't change that value next, 2 years from now when this other item disappears.
But it does
You're right,
surprise,
Dan, we can only do it.
it does surprise me that essential services is what we're talking about, and everybody left.
Well,
Hello.
a lot of people.
You
have
know,
kids.
Not everybody, not everybody.
Well, not everybody, but
So,
the majority.
Just the tough ones stayed.
so listen, this process is not easy for anybody, whether you're sitting on that side of the table, this side of the table, in the town office, or anywhere else. Whether it's a school budget or a town budget, it's not easy, okay? And nobody wants an increase in their taxes, and I think what's being put forth here, including those suggestions, is not gonna increase taxes. Is it what everybody wants and we're not getting a big reduction? Yeah, that sucks. But you don't have a lot of community members here to support you and give you guidance. So you were put there and elected by people to make a decision, And you need to accept the responsibility, make the decision, and move forward. And if they don't like it, they can put their name on the ballot the following year. It's as simple as that, guys. It's as simple as that. If you feel that's where we need to go, I'm supportive of that as well, then make your move and let's move on.
So,
But to sit here and
Lori,
try to
since you
figure it
made-
out this year ain't gonna happen.
Since you made the initial motion, do you want to amend your motion to include the actual values now?
Well, is my math right? Did someone else do it? 338,
050?
050?
That's what I have.
Where are you at?
338,050 would be the total added to the capital purchases. It would be 43,750 to the sidewalk match, because we were short.
$25 and $25.
So right now, I'm looking at I've got 200,000 for the grader rebuild, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got 40,000 for reserve for fire department equipment repairs.
Yeah. that was
Right.
in there.
I've got 44,300 for the generator.
Right.
Transfer switch,
Yep.
okay.
Did you want to change that to not to exceed 45 like we talked about, just to make sure we can cover it, or? I'm sure it's going to come out lower, but I think you mentioned that.
We have 5,000 for the recreation facility reserve, tennis courts. We've been starting to reserve money there to make repairs to those tennis courts. 264,500 for the road project reserve. 43,750 for the sidewalk match. 25 for the safety roof, safety complex roof replacement. Am I correct?
Yes,
I mean, that's what's there so far.
right. And the 200 for the grader doesn't go there? Is that what I'm understanding? Or did I miss that?
Well, in my spreadsheet here, it's going here because it's going to calculate it out.
Okay.
So I'm not putting that grader anywhere else, but right here. It's going to appear differently on the warrant, but
And then Jason mentioned 25 and 25, but didn't you say you wanted to put more in the roof account so that we could try to do that in one shot next year instead of, because we thought it would be cheaper, which
I
makes
think there's a
sense to me.
savings if we do the roof.
Can we ask
one.
Gerald a question, or
Yeah, he's here.
can I put you on the spot, Gerald?
I
The
thought
roof,
total
the
was
roof bid
50,000.
you had, the roof bid you had for us,
50,000 for the roof?
was that the whole amount? Did you bid it out in three, or did you get a bid for the whole amount and then just give us?
I did it in three, so the less chance of raising the taxes, doing it in three sections.
Right. So to Dan's point, that if we put money in this budget and money in next budget and do it all at once, we would save money, chances are.
Yeah, it would be savings on the splices of doing it, 2 or 3 splices and redoing it over again the following year or 2 years. It takes 2 years to build up 50,000. The overall cost was about 100,000.
So
The overall cost is what?
The overall cost is 100,000. The size of the roof is about 100,000. So that's why it's separated into
What did I have
3 sections.
50,000 in my head? I had 50, that must have been just part of it?
Because he was gonna ask.
50,000 was like the first section,
Yeah.
the bigger section. Then it was another 50,000 for the other 2 sections, but I separated that into 2. Again, take the name, it would be into 3 sections, or 3 years. Instead of raising taxes to do it in 1 year.
But it was a little bit costlier to split it up,
Correct, because
which is what he was getting at. If you could get it all done in one shot. Right now, he's totaling about 100,000. If you do it all at once, it may be, I'll say
Right.
90,000. I don't know what it is, but
maybe 2 or 3,000 per place,
2 or 3,000.
per slice or per year. But then again, that was last year's price, but
Why are you laughing?
Because we're cutting on our mill rate savings all the time.
No, I'm not saying
That's one.
to touch that. I'm just saying, Jason said 25, 25. if we're gonna ask to lease a fire truck and we're giving him 40 to fix the 2 we have now, we might be safe to put 25 in public works and take the other 25 he's talking about and put it toward the roof. And then the next budget put the other 50 so that he can do the roof at one time before it starts leaking. If we're gonna save money that way, you know, like, are we just wasting money by trying to cut this, and you know, I think Dan had a good point with that.
Well, I mean, we're discussing what, $2,000 or $3,000 savings here if we did it.
So right now, again, if my math is correct, I'm still in net decrease. The budget is up. The expense budget is up 2.7% from last year.
Well,
Factoring in the revenue of 414,102, above additional revenue from last year. Our net right now is 234,720. So you're still, you know, you're still net.
We're still, so that's more like 2/3 of them then. Roughly.
So can we entertain the thought of taking that additional amount that we want to put on the roof out of the ambulance reserve?
I would not at this point, because they have, it's just, I mean, you're looking at me. Here we go.
How much are we already taking out of the reserve, and we're up to what, 400?
Oh, no, just 250.
Right.
No, but we're taking out the additional 200 as well.
We're taking out 2 right now. That's what I have in the budget.
No,
For the,
we're changing that 200,000 to 250,000. It's not 480 or whatever.
but then there's 200 grand for the grader.
That's what that's for.
That's what that's
It's
for.
the same 200.
So we're
That's the
taking,
same.
No.
oh, okay, it's.
We're changing the 200 that we discussed.
Okay, I thought we were taking out 2 and then.
No.
We're changing the 200 we discussed to
Because the only thing I
250.
want to add is, you know, we will be in need of another ambulance here in the next incoming year, if not this month, as our oldest one is due for an inspection, and hopefully it'll pass, and we can go another year, but just so we're aware that we will need another ambulance and then a stretcher over the next coming year, so I just want to, let's be as cautious with that reserve account.
Did you guys, like as I was plugging in numbers, I wasn't hearing you guys, but did you guys say put 50 more out of the ambulance, take 50 more to make that 250, or you still have 200?
No,
Because right now,
I was saying
Suggested
250.
more,
because right now, what I'm giving you there, that net is at 200 from the ambulance.
Okay, no.
So the net of 234,720, it's at 200. If I put that at,
Change that by 50,000.
250,
But don't we have to fund the undesignated fund there? I'm sorry, I don't want to empty the ambulance or cut the ambulance too much. Like, that's a conversation we have to have later on. So it's not really a budget conversation, but the undesignated fund needs to, we need to do something with that.
How much does an ambulance cost?
Right now,
For our knowledge.
back in March, I asked for a quote because we were kind of looking ahead for the one that we need to replace, and they're about 220,000 right now.
Is that new or is that a remount?
That's, I mean, we can explore other options as well, and that's a big price.
so like it's 284, 720.
So what is the figure?
With the 250,
Yeah.
it's net increase of 284, 720.
280.
284, 720.
So even with the 250 we're taking out of the ambulance, it leaves 450,000 in there, which is enough to cover the ambulance that it needs.
Would you be okay with that?
He's never gonna say yes to it, but I mean, you do it.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to script him.
At the end of the day, I mean, I can say no, but does it matter? I mean, it's
Yeah, it matters.
taxpayers' money, so. I mean, obviously, I don't like you guys taking money out of my.
Because we don't want you to be in the same boat he's in right now.
Right, well, I know, and I get that too, but, I'm also a fair minded guy, and, you know, and we are
Yeah.
times right now, we need to help each other out, and I'm okay with that, but we gotta use this cautiously, because I got my needs as well.
Yeah.
With it as part, you know.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I think the target's always been about 500,000. I think we're good at 500,000. So we're close.
Yeah, well, that doesn't factor in how much money at the end of this budget that they're gonna put back in there. I just took roughly 700,000, yeah, and subtracted the 250 without taking into consideration what's going back in, and it is more than 700, so. So then you're proposing, instead of 25,000 for the roof, you do 50,000? I mean, we gotta put a number down, so is that what you're looking at?
For the what?
For the roof?
The roof, instead of 25,000?
I didn't mess with that number. Did you guys change that?
No,
not
that's
yet.
what he's questioning right now.
Gary, right now you have the generator in there, the grader, and the sidewalk match, correct?
I'll list it out for you one more time.
Well, the figure that we were just discussing, that 338,050 includes that plus the 25 for the roof and the other 25 there that we were discussing.
So,
Well, no, he just added,
so right now, I'll recap. 200 for the grader, 40 for fire department for equipment repairs, 44,300 for the generator switch, 5,000 for recreation facility reserve, 264,500 for the tennis court, for the road project reserve, MWT sidewalk match, 43,750, safety complex roof replacement project, 25,000. The grand total of that right now is 622,550.
and what did that do to our number?
Right now, are there any errors in these formulas?
Almost double that.
You didn't say that. 225 here. You didn't say that.
That's what I
Our
had.
net when factoring revenue is 284,720 decrease. But it's a 2.7% increase in the expense budget.
Because you added 50 more from the ambulance.
Yeah. We were at 234,
Yeah, okay.
720.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand.
So, did you include the 225,000 we wanted to put fire?
Not yet.
Public Works, okay. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I want to know what, if we do that and we add the 25 for the roof, what that gives us. That's what I'm trying to figure out. 'Cause we
You're
already-
still going to be at 200 and you're still going to be over $500,000.
Okay, so then
To
is
the
that
good.
what you want to do? Do you want to change the 25 to 50? We're just trying to move it along and make decisions. Is that what we're planning on doing?
Well, I'll add that to my motion if that's, I don't even know where I'm at anymore with the motion.
No, that's what I'm trying to question, like.
Yeah, okay,
We can't-
let's add that.
I got a question on the roof. Gerald, am I correct that we're not addressing any roof issues this year? We're too late into the season, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we put money aside for the roof in this budget, when we get to the next budget, will that be in time? What would be your time frame next summer? Hopefully that would,
After June.
okay, after town meeting, so you'd have double.
Get the town meeting, they take another 25,000.
Okay.
I don't need
Okay, that's-
100,000 now. I don't want to eat steak now and everybody else eats cereal.
Well, the thing with this is you.
I'd rather have hamburger for everybody.
So the thing with this, Gerald, is you get $50,000 in this budget, and if we keep it next year, you get $50,000 in next year's, and that would keep us even with, right, so you'd have your full 100,000.
You'd be ready to go.
Right.
Right, I had 50,000 after next June, so I can do one section and then work on the other section after that, depending who's willing to give me food.
That makes more sense.
Well, if you got a bid, you could do the whole thing if it
I don't think
passes
you
next
understand
June.
that correctly.
No.
Because we're giving you 50
We're
now.
putting-
and
yeah,
50
we're doing 50 now and 50
now
next
and 50
year,
in June.
so-
It's the same board.
Takes
If it passes, you could do the whole roof next summer and hopefully be cheaper that way, is what we're trying
But
to
then
accomplish.
somebody's got to start somewhere. You don't want to raise taxes.
We wouldn't have to be raising taxes because we've already,
Okay.
You'd have the full amount to complete the project in one shot next summer.
With two budget cycles.
It'd just be less of a decrease in the taxes, that's all.
it would be less of a decrease, but it means no increase next year to cover the rest.
You don't want to get shot on sidewalks.
Yeah, but
We're still in shock from last year, so we should be able to suffer through this one.
Yeah.
Everybody needs it.
All right.
All right, so what is the figure that we're,
So if Gary could add the 225s and the additional roof 25, that'll give us.
Hold on just a second.
I don't know if I'm right there, but 363.50.
Brendan, 25 is not a lot for asphalt and roads, but would you rather see that 25 extra in that account or in the capital account? I would like to know your opinion
The capital account for where?
for equipment eventually, if we try to put a little bit every year to get to a truck at some point.
Either way,
Okay, I just wondered
if we
if
put
you,
it in the account, we'll probably have a truck 6 months a year earlier, but our roads are gonna deteriorate and then vice versa.
yeah.
It all depends on.
It'll help, just don't matter.
Said that it should be designated as such.
So Gary, I would show 209,720. If we
209
match our
to the
net,
good?
if we match our net, would be 209,720.
You're doing what now, putting 50 in that roof project?
Adding an extra 25 to the roof,
Okay.
and Jason's suggesting 25 to the fire department and 25 to public works, capital.
Right.
Okay, so you're putting 50 instead of 25 at safety complex roof replacement?
Yep.
You are putting, how much more at the fire department?
25,000, trying to build toward
Capital,
something.
Would be to their truck fund.
so that becomes 65? 40, you're adding what, 25 to that?
No, they don't have anything now for the truck.
Are we talking about fire department, or are we talking about?
So you got your 40,000, hold on, you got your $40,000 we're giving them to fix their trucks, right?
Right.
Okay, ignore that. Now we want to give them an additional $25,000, like we used to replace the
Capital
trucks.
reserve.
Capital reserve, right.
Okay, so,
And the same thing with public works, 25,000 for capital reserves.
okay. And then, I'm just gonna use an old title here and I'll change it later, but somewhere in these columns here.
We can't see it anyway.
Must be some scribbling on that.
You should see all the whiteout on his screen.
So I'm at 672, 250. Let me make sure everything adds up right.
How you doing with minutes, Natalie?
A lot of them.
Sorry.
Or do you, while he's looking at that, do we have a figure that you want to propose now? For this,
Well,
for this?
if my number matches there, if we match, then
I don't think you're gonna match.
But at least we get the right number.
okay, we don't match and you go set the taxes by yourself in the fall, because I'm not getting the crap for this. You guys too there, I just want you to know, she's quiet over there, but this one has had a lot of input in all these things I'm throwing out, and Dan too, and I'm not, I spent time on Zoom with Jason. I'm not just making this all up by myself.
Yeah, right.
Well, I have to understand, like, I'm just not, like, I can't just,
It's easy to spend taxpayers' money, but it's hard to cut it once it's, try to reduce, very hard. I've noticed that since being
well,
on
and
this.
the increase that we have, like, you keep saying, oh, it's increased this percent or whatever, those are increases that, like, we can't fix. It's county and the VRF and the things that we can't, there's things you can't get rid of.
I think this year was tough. I think the next couple of years might be really tough.
You know, these budgets have been so flat funded for so many years
Yeah.
that, it's depleted a lot of our,
So you're at
a lot of our accounts.
672, 550 for reserves with those new numbers.
Can I have that again?
No, hold on. Let this out. Choose a cell.
Yeah, until these savings accounts go back to where they're supposed to be, these capital accounts, so we're not you know, scrimping, it'll be a long time.
$697,550 for reserves.
690,
$697,550.
And what effect does that have on the mill rate?
Hold on, just a second. So right now you're at 209,720.
That's
Net.
what I got to.
Yeah. So I think I'd be happy with that.
Very good.
There we go.
So do you want to amend your motion?
So so you're motioning on the capital budget?
Well, she's already made a motion to discuss the numbers. She now just has to amend her motion to include the actual figure values we came up with.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to add to the capital purchase and reserve budget $44,300 for the emergency generator, $200,000 for grader repair, $43,750 for the sidewalk match. That's not actually an addition, it's just a change. We're gonna change the roof number of 50,000, and we're gonna throw 25,000 into public works and 25,000 into the fire department.
Right.
Is that everything?
All right.
That is my motion.
Well, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
So I'm going to abstain from this one again because it does contain fire department.
Gary, are you coming up with,
I got the same number she is,
okay.
right? 209,720.
And we have an overlay in case we messed it up.
Okay.
Oh.
Hopefully.
We still have the revenue to look at?
And I didn't, just to make a note, I was gonna abstain from the ambulance department because my daughter-in-law was looking to work there, but that's, I think that's a done, I don't know if that's even happening, so that's why I'm still involving myself.
So when
We
you
have a motion, and we have a second, right?
So our second,
we already voted.
we're good?
We vote.
Yeah,
What time is it?
All right,
Sorry.
now we're on to revenue.
so now I'm gonna make a motion to.
So, no, we need to bring that to the, to
Oh, yeah.
the finance committee.
What was that total dollar amount? Sorry, I had to step out. You guys made me sit here too long.
To the capital?
Yes.
You want? Okay, hold on.
What was the amount they just approved?
$697,550 was the amount that Gary just gave us earlier.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the amount you guys just motioned?
Right.
So, do I have motion from the finance committee to recommend the capital purchase and reserve budget $697,550?
I make a motion to accept.
All those in favor? Motion carries.
So Lori, I'll make the motion for the revenue since I originally made the change for the ambulance, just so it kind of falls through, if you don't mind.
No, I'm good.
So I'll make the motion to accept the revenue as is with the change of $250,000 instead of $200,000 coming from the ambulance.
We haven't, okay. Just want to say that if you're thinking about bringing in the, repurposing the town office study money,
Feasibility study.
then that's revenue in here that we need to plug in there.
Okay.
So,
So the feasibility study, what was the numbers?
20?
That was 20,000 even.
Okay.
I scribbled on it there, but these are the account numbers and the amounts. This said 504 before I scribbled it out. Here.
Okay, so that would be, in addition, we have the 20,000 from the feasibility study, the 5760 from the health, and the 504 from the 150th.
How's that work though? Those aren't audited numbers yet, are they?
Those reserve accounts? Yeah,
They are?
they haven't changed. So
The 504 from
they haven't been
150th
audited
is
yet,
from
but
last-
There's been no activity in them since
Went through last year, okay.
Um, I gotta create some new lines here, but what's the bottom number there, so I can just, we'll make note of it, I don't wanna change my.
26,000 is on there now,
Yeah,
26,000.
264 plus the extra 50,000 that I put, so it's an extra 76,264.
So say it again, 7?
So we had the 26,264 from those three accounts, plus the additional 50,000 on top of the 200,000 that I originally asked for. So that's an addition of 76,264.
50 for the ambulance, me?
Yeah, 50 for the ambulance plus 26.
That's already here, so.
Okay.
The number that I gave you there is inclusive of that already. The only thing that's changing the number right now
It's 26,264.
is 26,264. Okay, so I don't wanna blow up my spreadsheet here, because I've done that before, and it's not fun. So let me just figure it out on my summary sheet. 26,264?
Yep.
So that's 235,984. Net decrease.
So any discussion on that?
Did someone second that?
Oh, I'll second that.
Okay. So, any questions?
My only question about the revenue budget is, in all this time, have you ever seen, and I'm a little worried right now about the state, them come out with a projection, because this number here that we're going on, we're doing all this fancy stuff with, is based on this projection that their revenue forecasting committee gave us. Have you ever seen that change?
I've never seen their revenue sharing figure come in less than what they projected when they've told us. And so, and being this late in the game, this late in the season, they gave us a number here in, when was it? A month ago? And so I don't see that they're going to renege on that. I would be shocked. That's not to say that the school in the past didn't get, back in the early 90s, didn't get all of their education appropriation, but they got it the year after.
They had to skip a month one year. We didn't get our June payment, and so it's like 1/12 of your revenue was cut.
Right. So,
I mean, we're all working with that figure, you know, so for them to come back behind the scenes and throw us a curveball would really throw us way off the mark.
You're more secure now because we're so late in the year doing it versus when you were prior. You really were running off an estimate, you know.
Okay, I just want to make sure that comes out here, there, that this is, you know. So you need to vote, Doug? Yes?
So we are ready for a vote? All in favor? Opposed? Just carried. It's all yours,
What
Chris.
was your final number on that one again? Because it was that 414.
What was that figure again? So we added an additional 26,264 to that number.
Yep. So your revenue number, your grand total revenue number, I will print all these out, updated for you guys.
Yep.
Send them out as soon as I can.
If you can read your scribbling.
Hopefully somebody's taking good minutes.
Yeah.
So right now, it's looking like our revenue is $2,126,402.
That's what's proposed.
No, that was the number that was there before.
Yeah, that's what's
Hold on.
proposed.
Hold on. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I didn't. I did.
You don't have that line or something?
Yeah, I didn't have those lines, and that's why it's not there. So take that number plus the
Okay.
26.
So it should be 22,02666.
Yeah.
26, 2, 6, 4, 6, 6, 6, 12, 21, 2,152,000.
Well, no, because in our sheets don't have the extra 50,000.
Oh, I see.
So it's $2,202,666.
Okay. Yeah.
And no cents.
So I would take a motion from the finance committee to recommend the revenue budget at $2,202,666.
Make a, accept it.
Okay, second? Second. Robert, all those in favor? Carried.
There we go. What else do we have?
That's it.
To consider any other business? Do you have any other business to consider?
Unless you're buying me supper, I got nothing.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? Oh, really?
Hey, Dan, here.
How many beans do you have left?
I know.